Hello, my dear viewers. This amazing story will be very instructive for you. It is very interesting and beautiful. I wish you enjoy watching it.
She was sitting on a bench in front of the institute and just wanted to relax. She bought herself an ice cream and was now enjoying the beautiful weather and nature. She saw a young man walking by. He didn't seem to notice anyone around him. He just kept walking and looking at the book he was holding in his hands. Barely a minute later, he was sitting at the other end of the bench. All this time, he had not taken his eyes off his reading for a moment. "Hello," she greeted him. But the young man was so engrossed in his work that he didn't pay attention to that either. He took a notebook out of his pocket and started to draw something in it while looking into his textbook or method book every minute. Not even a few minutes passed before he had crossed everything out, torn it out, and thrown it away. "Can I help you?" The girl came closer. "What?" He finally noticed her and raised his head. "I see you are not well. Let me see," she asked him. "No, I'll do it myself." The young man blushed. It was obvious that only now he realized that someone was looking at him. "Why don't you want to?" She didn't understand. "I have to defend myself soon. And I don't understand." He stared at his book again. "Let's see." Now she just pointed it out to him. The girl took the book from his hand. Good. He wanted to see what she would do. So she took a piece of paper and started sketching. "See, I don't want to be like everyone else. I have to have my own vision," he quickly said to her while she was already drawing on the ruler. "Look," the girl showed him what she had done. "How so?" He couldn't believe that she had summarized his thoughts on a piece of paper. "It's very simple." The girl began to show and tell. "Thank you," the young man said and stood up. "You are welcome." She looked at him and smiled. "Shall we meet tomorrow after the defense?" the man asked, realizing that they didn't even know each other. Good. She found that funny. Alexander, waiting for her answer, was ready to run. "Katie," the girl could see that he was in a hurry. "That's it, Kathy. See you here tomorrow at 4, he said as he left. "Goodbye," she looked after him. Katie noted that they were studying at the same institute, and Alexander had apparently started his internship. The girl liked studying here, not only because she knew and understood everything, but because she had her own idea of what they were doing. The girl came to the dormitory. There were no roommates, which was good. You could study in peace. Katie put her books and notebooks on the table and started to draw something. She liked to design. She thought of unusual objects. When she had her defense, a man on the committee said he remembered her name and would recommend her one day. "Oh, you're back at work." Casey came into the room. "No, I was just checking on something." Kathy turned to her. "Yes, school is out and she is still on her books." She began to change. "It's okay." I didn't want to argue with her. The girls went for a walk. It was a warm day outside and Katie didn't want to leave anything undone. She had to go home for the vacation soon, so everything had to get done. She remembered the appointment Alexander had made for her tomorrow. As she went to bed, she thought about it. "Good morning," Katie said to herself, waking up in a good mood. She went into the kitchen and put the kettle on. The neighbors hadn't been around since the evening, but that didn't matter. After morning tea with cookies, the girl washed her face, did a little work, and decided to take a little walk. Then the time would fly by. And so it did. And by 4 o'clock, she was already sitting on the bench where they had met yesterday. "You're here." A guy came from behind. "Why, shouldn't I have done that?" The girl was surprised. "No, why?" He hesitated. "Just because you were so happy," she laughed, because she noticed that they didn't even greet each other, but immediately started an emotional conversation. "Sorry." He sat down next to her. "It's okay. What about the defense?" She pointed to his bag. "You have no idea." He began to tell her that tonight at home he finished her project, which she had sketched on paper, and today he told her they had all noticed the new trends. "You make it sound so interesting, like it's some kind of story." Katie looked Alexander in the face. "Let's go." He shook her hand. "Okay." She stood up. The two walked around the alleys for a while. They talked a lot. Mostly all the conversations revolved around the same topic. "You are so interesting with you," the man said to her. "And she wasn't fooling around with you. Do you want a coffee or something?" he asked. "I wouldn't say no." The girl said, a little embarrassed, although that wasn't part of her repertoire. They went to one of the cafes, where Alexander ordered them drinks. Once again, talk, talk, talk. Will we meet again? He asked a question that worried him more than the projection. I think so. What class are you in? Asked the girl. Fourth. He looked at her. Why have we never met? She rounded her eyes. Do you live in the dormitory? He guessed. Yes, she nodded. And I'm a local, he smiled. What difference does it make? Katie couldn't understand. Nothing. It's just that I come to class, mostly sit in the classroom, and then go straight home. Alexander told her how his day had gone. I see. And then what do you do in the summer? She asked herself. I haven't thought about that yet, but I'm not going out, the boy laughed. Come and visit me, she offered him. I won't refuse. He looked at the girl. She had beautiful eyes. Then I'll wait for you. She took a pen and wrote her address in a notebook for him. Well, you ruined it, Alexander smiled. It's all right. She put the empty glass on the table, got up and went to the exit. Wait, where are you going? He followed her. I have to go home. I have to pack. Tomorrow morning there was a bus that would take her to her mother. I'll take her home, he said, walking beside her. You know, as long as I've been a student here, I've never met such fanatics, Katie admitted. You mean me? Alexander guessed. Yes, and me, she laughed. They reached the hostel, said goodbye, and agreed that he would definitely come to her. I promised. I'm so interested in you. He looked after her as she walked through the door, turned, and went home. Katie was glad it had worked out that way. She had met exactly the kind of man she had dreamed of. They had common topics of conversation. They liked the same things, and most importantly, Alexander was a fan of what he did. The neighbors still weren't there. Katie assumed they had just left their things here and gone home. She packed her bag, went to do laundry, did her routine, set the alarm, and went to bed. Katie had been in a hurry since morning. She had to get everything done, but she knew she could do it. She got on the bus that was leaving, and the girl looked out the window at the passing scenery. It had been so long since she had been to her mother's. This meeting was welcome, but it was still a long way. After the bus, she had to take a train and then another bus. Mom. The girl entered her house. Daughter. Came to meet her. They stood and looked at each other. Hello. The woman and the girl hugged each other. How I missed you, they said to each other. That's it. Let's go to the table. Probably you are hungry, worried the mother. Yes. Immediately Katie presented the taste of homemade cakes. They made fragrant tea, sat down at the table, and talked for a long time. The daughter told how she studied in the northern capital, and in general, what was going on there. And the mother listened and was pleased that she already has such a mature and intelligent daughter. Well, and how about on the personal front? The mother was scurrying around the kitchen. I recently met a wonderful man, Katie said, blushing as she was embarrassed to tell her mother. What are you talking about? The woman wiped her hands with a towel and sat down across from her daughter. His name is Alexander, and he's supposed to come visit us this summer, the girl said modestly again. Wow. And where is he from? The mother asked. He's from here. He lives where he studies. Katie realized she didn't know anything about Alexander herself, and how was she supposed to find out when they had only known each other for 2 days? She told her mother. And you knew right away that he was your husband? She asked herself. You know, when we first started talking, it was like I thought to myself, Katie admitted. It is good when you have found your husband. The woman remembered how she had met her husband. After a long conversation at the table, mother and daughter went out into the garden. There was a lot to do. Don't look. I'll do everything myself. Go for a walk. Maybe you'll meet your friends. The woman didn't want to burden the girl with work. You know, I don't feel like it yet. On the contrary, she wanted to help her mother. They did something until the evening. Then they heated the sauna, steamed, and now they sat at the table and drank sweet tea with honey. It's so nice to be home, Kathy said with a sigh. Don't think about the village. You have a career ahead of you. Now you're going to marry your boyfriend. You're going to make it in the big city, and everything will be fine with you. The mother knew how much her daughter loved this place. We will see how it goes. You do not know the man yet, and you have already married us, laughed the girl. If my daughter chose him, I will like him too, the woman was sure. They talked about many things and then went to bed. Neither the girl nor her mother could sleep. Each was thinking about something else. Katie did not know how she would meet the young man, and the woman lay there dreaming that her daughter would always be fine. How great was the surprise when in the morning Katie heard a knock on the window and pulled back the curtain. Alexander was standing outside. He looked around and waited to be opened. "Hello." She came out of the gate to invite him in. Surprised, he saw the expression on his new friend's face. She nodded, and together they entered the courtyard. "And I decided what to wait for. There is nothing to do in the city in the summer, and here you have plenty of space. I will rest. If it is inconvenient to receive me at home, maybe I will live somewhere else." They went into the courtyard, and Alexander talked and talked. "Mom, we have a visitor." Katie did not listen to his nonsense. "Who?" The woman came out and stood dumbfounded. She, like her daughter, had not expected to have guests so soon. "This is the Alexander I was telling you about." The girl was amused to see the expression on her mother's face. "Oh, and I haven't finished anything yet." The woman began to gush. She didn't know what to hold on to. She felt that all of this should have been done yesterday. But how did they know he would show up so soon? "It's nothing. I just want to get some tea out of the way," Alexander said, putting his bag in the corner. There, sit down," Mama said quickly and put the kettle on the stove. "I'm going to change now," said Katie, and went into the other room. "Oh, you're Alexander. And I'm Natalie." She remembered she hadn't introduced herself to Mom yet. "Nice to meet you." The young man smiled politely. When everything was ready, all three of us sat at the table, drank herbal tea, and ate flavored cheesecake. "Did you like it?" Katie looked at him. "You know, everything seems to taste better here." He enjoyed the homemade food. "That's why I love this place. Even the air outside is different." The girl continued with breakfast. After that, the young people went outside. Katie wanted to show Alexander so much. You know, a lot of people talk about how they went to visit their grandmother in the village in the summer or someone they wanted to visit. And I was just thinking that I've never really been to places like that. I was born in the city and I've always lived in the city. I'm used to it all. But look at the beauty here. He went for a walk and he was happy about every bush, every blade of grass that he saw. "What are you telling me? I have spent my whole life here," she laughed. Alexander could see how much Katie liked it here. She felt at home. It was still chilly. Swimming was not allowed. Katie felt sorry for that. "Well, it's not my last day here," he told her then. "Yes, I hope so too," the girl rejoiced. At home, they mostly talked about designing, blueprints, buildings, how and what. "You are so smart." Alexander looked at her. "Don't be stupid." "You are not stupid either," she really thought. At first, it was unusual to have a man living in the house, but then everyone got used to it. Alexander stayed in the village for about 2 months. He could not stay longer. He had to prepare for the studies. Katie did not want him to leave. She was used to Alexander always being there for her. When she said goodbye to him, she couldn't resist giving him a kiss on the cheek. After that, she averted her eyes and stood in front of him just like that. "Are you serious?" He reached for the spot where he had just kissed her. "Why not?" She looked into his eyes. "You and I have been together for so long. I can tell you like me. We're not small anymore." The bus had already pulled up, but Alexander was in no hurry to get on. He took her face in his hands and kissed her firmly on the lips. "Don't miss me. I'll be there soon," she told him softly. Then he got on the bus and looked out the window for a long time at the girl he was having so much fun with. When Katie got home, she already knew that she and Alexander would be together. "So, Mom, how do you like Alexander?" she asked the woman. "Oh, Oleshka, he is a wonderful choice for marriage," she told her. "Today we kissed for the first time," the girl confessed to her mother, "and I congratulate you on it. Stick to this guy and you will always be fine." Her mother wished from the bottom of her heart. The vacations came to an end and Katie also went to her studies. She continued to live in the dormitory. With Alexander, they went out. They did everything together because the studies and the tasks were almost the same. "Have you thought about where you want to work?" the young man asked her. "I don't know, maybe in a factory," she said, frowning. "I've thought about that too," he admitted. As the 5th year came to an end and the graduation defense was coming up, the boys helped each other. They listened to the defense, the presentation. Everything went well for them both. "You prepared very well," the young man said to her. "You too," she replied to him. It was going to be great, he believed. It couldn't be any other way. They kissed. After graduation, we will go to your mother in the village, and I will ask her for your hand, Alexander said. I am very happy about it. She smiled at her lover. Of course, Katie did not think about it, but she knew that this was her husband whom fate had destined for her. Everyone did what the young man said. The mother, of course, agreed to give her daughter away. She believed that this was a reliable person who would never get her into trouble. The wedding was decided to play in the village as well. Neither the girl nor the boy had any friends, so they invited the closest ones. Alexander's parents also came. Everything was very cheerful and good. It was not like a wedding in the city in a restaurant. Alexander's mother offered to move in with them, but the young man didn't want that. He and Katie decided to rent an apartment. As planned by the two, they entered the factory to work as engineers. Everything appealed to them, but it wasn't exactly their specialty. They had to force themselves to do things they didn't feel like doing. The salary was also low. We had to rent an apartment and live on the money. Alexander, I have a proposal for you, Katie said to him, who always had many ideas, and with this expression, she made him curious. Why don't you tell me what you've been up to? He was always ready to listen to her. What would you think about you and me moving to the region and opening our own business there? She asked a question that had been on her mind for a long time. And what do you have in mind? He asked with interest. Design and interior design. She had already thought of everything. In some ways, you are right. The apartment will cost less. That will not stop us at first. Her husband agreed. So they did it. And in a few months, the couple lived in a small apartment and painted, drew, and did everything else. At Katie's suggestion, they began working from home. At first, she went to some construction sites, looked around, found out who was buying apartments, offered to design them. But people were so suspicious that it was better for them to go to a company than to trust a stranger. But one day, when Kathy offered her services, a couple agreed because they were happy with the price, and in a way they were also experimenters. Katie and Alexander set to work, sitting at home for days and nights drawing and designing things the way they wanted them. It was time to show the work to the clients. When they saw the project, they already liked it, and when everything was finished, their joy knew no bounds. The customers told the others and the third parties, and so word of mouth spread about the creative designer couple who had settled in the city. It was gratifying to see orders increase. Although the couple had no time to sleep, they were doing something for people. Don't you think, honey, that it's time to have a baby? Katie asked Alexander one day. You mean you're pregnant? He smiled. I can't hide anything from you. She was happy. Time passed. The task was accomplished. It was time to give birth to a child. A beautiful girl was born, whom the parents named Leslie. Now it seemed that only good things were ahead. Enough money had already been earned to rent a small building and start their own business there. Katie and Alexander didn't hesitate long and got themselves an office. Now many people knew about them, so there were no problems with orders, especially since they did not produce standard solutions, but invented new variants. They were appreciated, they were approached. When Leslie was 6 years old, her father and mother took her to the first grade. Everything was so good, nothing could dim this happiness. During the lessons, Katie suddenly became ill. She fell on her husband and then lost consciousness. Alexander called an ambulance, but figured that it was probably another pregnancy. It turned out that this was not the case. The doctor who was watching the girl came out into the corridor. Which one of you is the husband? He asked, because there were a lot of people sitting there. That's me, Alexander said and stood up. I have some very bad news for you, said the doctor. What is it? Alexander waited for the final word. Your wife has cancer, and she will not live much longer because you have not been to the doctor for a long time, and everything is already in a neglected stage, said the doctor, not feeling sorry for the man. Alexander cried at home, but tried not to show it to Katie. She did not understand what the problem was. She could see that her husband was upset about something. And then she got worse and had to go to the hospital. Alexander couldn't go there in peace. Leslie sat by her mother's bedside. It got worse every day. Not even 8 months later, the woman had passed away. This was a heavy blow from which Alexander could not recover for a long time. At first, Leslie was taken to her grandmother's, but after the summer vacations, Alexander decided to take his daughter with him after all, because she was now as badly off as he was. It was necessary. Well, I agree with you. Let her get a higher education, and then she can do what she wants. Alexander stopped to himself. Leslie learned, yes, she agreed, that she probably had something from her mother and father. She was good at inventing, at drawing. She was praised, remembering how Alexander and Katie had learned here. She was always compared to them, which also annoyed Leslie. She didn't think about her personal life, but did her own thing when she was in the dorms. When she was a third-year student, she decided that as soon as she was done with it, she would switch to a correspondence course because she was bored. And if a girl decided to do something, she would do it. But she needed her father's opinion. Why are you home? Her father came into her room. He saw the boots on the doorstep and immediately realized it was Leslie. Dad, I came to talk to you. If I study now until the vacations, can I switch to part-time so I can work and study at the same time without losing time? She asked him. You know, I don't mind. The man agreed with his daughter for the first time, and he thought that she had taken it into her head and would finally continue what they had started with her mother. Thank you, she hugged him. Probably Leslie had an unfulfilled dream from her childhood, and she wanted to fulfill it. When summer came, the girl was home. She sat for a month, a second, and on the third Alexander could not stand it anymore, asked her when she would go to work. Do you have to do it now? The daughter looked at her father. And when, in 10 years, he wondered. Leslie rolled her eyes, but she had no choice. She herself offered him this opportunity. So she went to work the very next week. So that no one would say anything or judge her, Leslie became a simple professional. You are doing very well, a young girl sitting in the department told her. Oh, don't you start too. It annoyed Leslie when everyone told her she had talent. She could draw, she could design. She wanted something completely different. No, that's it. I'm not saying anything. Stepped away from her colleague. They had a big job to finish by New Year's Eve. A man was building a house, and they had to design everything in it, but in a way that no one else had. Everyone was trying. Alexander was still using his dead wife's notebook. He was taking her sketches, her drawings, adding his own, bringing in specialists, and they completed what Katie had started. What's this? Alexander threw a stack of papers on the table. My blueprints. Leslie looked up at him. It wasn't that. He showed the sketches. Dad, you do realize this is all outdated. I made it the way it's fashionable now. Yes, it's a bit fanciful, but why not? She started to argue with him. Leslie, we have such a priority. We have so many partners, so many clients. We can't let anyone down, he told her. Dad, don't you realize we need fashion now, not your outdated ideas? That evening they argued. The girl locked herself in her room, sat there for a long time, and then dialed her friend's number. Aubrey, hello, she called her. Oh, Nastya, how many years, how many winters, she rejoiced. Listen, do you feel like going out tonight? Leslie asked her. What all of a sudden? Nastya was surprised. Usually Leslie didn't let herself get carried away. She couldn't look at those drawings anymore. She wanted to do her own thing. Yeah, sure. Why are you so crazy? Aubrey asked. I'll tell you all about it later, Leslie promised. In the evening, they went to the club with their friend. The girls immediately went to the bar and ordered a cocktail. So tell me, what's going on with you? The girlfriend was interested. My father is annoying. He imposes his opinion on me. I can't say anything, Leslie said. So you studied in New York and you wanted to live there. Why did you come back? Her friend didn't understand. You know, he raised me alone. I cannot leave him. Leslie always felt sorry for her father. So, do you want another cocktail? Asked Aubrey. Fine, let's do it, Leslie agreed. When they finished their drinks, they went dancing afterwards. Leslie couldn't take any more and went back to the bar, and Aubrey continued dancing. The girl ordered herself another cocktail, and then another. She realized she had had enough, but for some reason she still wanted to go out tonight. Good evening, ma'am. A young man addressed her. Hello, Leslie said to him. Why are you so beautiful and alone? He began to ask her. Who told you I was alone? Leslie began to flirt. They ordered something, had a drink, then danced. Everything was a blur. Leslie was giddy. She seemed happy. The girl woke up in the morning. She opened her eyes. Her head was like cast iron. The girl just couldn't get it off the pillow. When her eyes focused, Leslie realized that she was not in her room. Aubrey, she said in a hoarse voice. but she heard no answer. Leslie knew she was not alone in bed because she sensed someone lying next to her. She turned around and immediately jumped out of bed. Her head immediately went blank, and she saw that they were in a small room with stripped wallpaper, a small bed with greasy sheets, and on it lay a young man, his hair dirty, himself all overgrown. "Yo, what happened last night?" Leslie quickly got dressed. She ran out of the apartment and ran home. Her father wasn't home, so she put her clothes in the washing machine and showered herself. After that, she cleaned herself up and went to work. "Where were you all night?" Dad found out she was home. "Dad, don't ask. She didn't even want to think about it." "Aubrey, hey, what happened last night?" She texted her friend. She didn't answer for a while, but then her phone beeped. "Hey, I don't remember anything," she wrote back. "You should have gone out like that," Leslie told her. Her friend didn't answer again, apparently feeling bad as well. Leslie sat at her desk all day trying to remember this guy's name, but she couldn't do it. "God, what an idiot I am." The girl inwardly felt ashamed because she was aware that there was probably something between them because she hadn't had any clothes on since that morning. She was ashamed to admit that the guy had nothing on either. Her father was starting the same company, but in a different area. Since he had to go on a business trip, Leslie volunteered. "Why so suddenly?" he asked her. "Just to get some air," she replied, and that was true. Leslie wanted to get out of this town, not see anyone, and think about everything that was going on in her life. "Okay, I trust you." Her father gave her all the necessary papers. Leslie went on a business trip. After a month in another city, the girl somehow calmed down and came back. After that, the father planned to open a few more stores. Now they had not just one company, but a real holding company of which Alexander was the head. He was very proud of it. Whenever he visited Kathy at the cemetery, he told her what was going on. 3 months had passed since the incident at the club. Katie sat at work and realized that something had been going on with her body lately. Dizziness, nausea. She wasn't stupid. She didn't ask anyone for anything. That evening, she went to the pharmacy and bought a test. In the morning, when she went to work, she took it. As she expected, it was positive. Not knowing what to do, she went to the hospital, had an ultrasound done, and everything was confirmed. She didn't want to have an abortion because she knew that if her mother was still alive, she would never approve. So Leslie decided to find the man. She remembered where she had come from then, but she was in no hurry to go there. Aubrey, she called her friend again to ask her advice. "Hey, where have you been?" she asked, because she hadn't seen her for a while. "I had a few things to do." "Let's meet," Leslie asked her. "What's so urgent?" I could hear that the girl was busy. There is nothing urgent anymore. The girl did not want to discuss this topic on the phone. "Then come over tonight," her friend said. "Great, I'll be at your place at 7. Leslie hung up. She kept thinking about what was happening now. Inside, everything stiffened as the girl thought of how she would tell her father. Time stretched very slowly until evening. Finally, Leslie called a cab and drove to the house where her friend lived. "What happened there?" asked Aubrey from the doorstep. She went into Leslie's kitchen. There on the table were already prepared cups. The girl sat down and waited for the hostess to pour tea. With sugar, she turned to her. "Do you remember when we were in the club?" The girl did not answer the question. "Yes," Aubrey sat down at the table. "I'm expecting a baby." Aubrey explained nothing more because she just couldn't remember. "By whom?" was a reasonable question. "I don't know. Probably from the guy I left there with," Leslie said. "My God, buddy, what are you up to? I hope you're having an abortion." Stared at her friend with wide eyes. "No," she shook her head at her guest. "What are you? Have you no brains at all?" She turned on her temple. "I want to find him and talk to him," Leslie admitted. "Yes, you are obviously out of your depth," sighed Aubrey. "I see. I came to you for advice, and now I see that you are not a good advisor," she smiled. "And what can I do if you have already decided everything by yourself? But I advise you before it is too late," the friend began to say. "That's it. I don't want to hear any more about it." Leslie got up from the table, realizing that today she had come for nothing. The next day, the girl told her father that she would be gone until noon. She herself went to the address from which she had walked home. She went to the door, knocked. No one answered, knocked again, and behind the door footsteps were heard. "Who are you?" A young man stood on the doorstep. He looked about the same as last time. Leslie, she entered. Leslie who? What are you doing here? I could hear that the man was not well. Listen, what's your name anyway? She turned to the young man. Anthony. He picked up a bottle of water and sipped it. So Anthony, I'm expecting a baby from you. Leslie wanted to sit down somewhere, but everything was so dirty she didn't know where. Haha, are you kidding me? He turned and looked at the door as if someone was coming. No, remember that night at the club? She looked at him. What night? What club? Get out. I'm seeing you for the first time. He took her hand and led her to the door. Believe me, I don't want to have a baby with you either. But since it already happened, there's nothing you can do. She yanked her hand away. Girl, what's your name, Leslie? If you got knocked up by someone else and now you want to dump it all on me, it won't work. He walked into the kitchen. Let's go somewhere and talk, she asked him. Can you buy me a beer? He immediately perked up. Good, she couldn't stay in this doghouse any longer. When they got to the diner that was next to the house where Anthony lived, things were a little better. The guy and the girl sat down at a table. He ordered a beer. What did you want to talk about? He asked. About our baby and how to move forward. She decided to order as well. What are you talking about? Tell me in order. He took a sip. That night we met at the club, then apparently went to your place. In the morning I woke up. You were next to me, ran away. And now I realize that this night was not just over, she said quickly. I don't remember anything. He sipped another cool drink. Me neither actually, just the beginning and the end. He was ashamed to admit to her. I don't understand what you want from me. I have nothing, not even a job, he said simply. She began to say, and then wondered what she actually wanted. What? He waited. His glass was already empty, but you could see that Anthony felt fine. No, nothing, sorry, she paid, got up and went to the exit. He shrugged his shoulders, saw that the girl had left more money on the table, and ordered another drink. The girl went to work and then back home. She now spent almost all her time in her room. She only went to the office and back in the evenings. Don't you think you're a little bloated? That's what her father said to her when Leslie was 6 months pregnant. You should be ashamed to say that, she wagged her finger. She didn't want him to know about her. If it's true, who's going to tell you but me? Papa has been very nervous lately. Papa, I have to tell you something, she said softly and lowered her eyes. She was ashamed to admit, especially who the father of her child was. Speak, we never had secrets, he waited, and his daughter stood there mumbling. I'm pregnant, Leslie said softly. What? Who is the father? He wondered how his always decent and careful daughter could get into such a situation. I don't know, she said with a shrug. There is no such thing, he said, stepping close to his daughter. Aubrey and I, she told him the story. I never thought my daughter could do something like that. How could you embarrass me in front of the whole town? He grabbed his head and walked up and down the kitchen. I'm sorry, I didn't know what else to say. Definitely an abortion. Her father stopped in front of her. No, Leslie made startled eyes. What do you mean no? Choose a career and a good life. Or, she realized it was an either or. Are you giving me an ultimatum? The daughter was shocked. Yes, who is he? Tell me, the man was already shouting. Some Anthony. Does not work. And not every day under the fly, she gestured. My God, squatted the father on the couch. He understood absolutely nothing. When had he missed Leslie's education? Why had this happened? Or maybe she had done it to annoy him. Dad, the girl was trying to talk to him. I know I'm probably doing the wrong thing right now, but you have to go. Everyone has to be responsible for their actions. You're going to live in poverty. You're going to see how you're going to fare. He pointed with his hands to the apartment they were living in now. You're throwing me out. The daughter was already cooking. It turns out, he got up and went to his office. Leslie didn't put up with it. She had her pride too. She went to her room, packed her things and left the family home. When her father saw this, he was even angrier. He thought his daughter would do what he wanted. At first, Leslie wanted to go to Aubrey because she knew she wouldn't turn her away and would let her live no matter what. But at the last moment, she stopped and changed her mind. She went back to Anthony. She entered the familiar entrance, went to the door and knocked. Hello, the man opened. He was in a good mood again. I'm here to see you. She entered the apartment. But why? He was not as adamant today as the first time. To live. She put the bags on the floor. Okay, come in. He went into the kitchen. The glasses began to clink. Leslie went into the room. She took the bedding off the bed and carried everything into the bathroom along with the comforter. Then she poured water into a bucket and started scrubbing the floor. Even if it was unpleasant, she tried. What are you doing here? Anthony came in. I'm scrubbing the dirt, she said. Fine, do what you want. He waved off and went back inside. When the floors were mopped, she went to the closet to see what was in there. It turned out that there was clean bedding in there. She took it out and fixed it up. Then she took out a blanket and put it on the couch. You sleep on the couch tonight, she told the owner. Why not you? He looked at her. Because she turned around. All was quiet until morning. Leslie had even slept well. In the morning, she got up and got ready for work. When she got there, the security guard told her she was fired and couldn't come in, and that he had been instructed not to let her in. Oh, so that's what you did. Leslie clenched her fists. She got in her car, stopped at the store, bought some groceries, and drove back. She entered the apartment, Anthony still asleep. Then the girl went into the kitchen and started cooking there. Perhaps with the smell that now spread throughout the apartment, the owner came in. Who are you? He asked. You are what? She turned around. You again. He sat down on a stool. Here, she put a tin can in front of him, which was steamed up. Thank you very much, he rejoiced. Will you stop already? Leslie watched him drink greedily. May, he couldn't tear himself away. What are we going to do now? She sat down at the table. Let's eat first. It smells so good. I've only been eating Chinese noodles lately, he laughed. Leslie fed the guy, then went into the room and cleaned it up. She put her papers on the table and thought about what to do next. What's in that room? She pointed to the closed door. There is no one here yet. The owner has already left, the young man explained to her. I see. Not only can you not live here, but it's a shared apartment. She smiled. This was not how Leslie had imagined her future life. Nothing could be done today. He could not think of anything, but Anthony slept all day. The next morning he was sober. He woke up and looked at her. Don't ask me who I am, she laughed. Yes, I remember. He stood up. And Leslie thought a strange girl came in, said she was expecting a baby, then moved out. Then the guy had gone off somewhere, and the girl knew if she raised money she'd come back happy. She didn't have time to think about it. Soon the baby was going to be born, and it needed a lot of things. So there was nothing to sit around. She had to figure out how to come up with money. At that moment, the girl's phone rang. It was Aubrey. Hi, buddy. You know what's going on in town? People are all up in arms, and all they talk about is your family, she said quickly. What are they saying? I didn't want to know, but I was curious. That your father is greedy and threw you out of the house, and even fired from work, and about you and worse, drunk. Getting involved with a drunkard. Aubrey did not stop. Let them say what they want. It didn't matter to Leslie. They continued talking about nothing, and the girl turned off the phone. It rang again. An unknown number was on the display. Hello, Leslie assumed that someone would call now to clarify whether all the talk was true or not. Leslie, a woman's voice asked. Yes, she waited. I would like to order a design from you, said a customer. You know, Leslie wanted to confess to her. She wasn't working anymore. Yes, I know you're not with your father anymore, but I want you, she said. Okay, I'll figure something out and send you a sample, Leslie agreed. She hung up the phone and rubbed her hands together. At that moment, a photo of the woman from her house appeared on her phone. After that, the girl put aside her work and began to think of something, to make sketches, so she sat until the evening, but she did not finish anything. As Leslie had expected, Anthony came home drunk. He didn't even look at her, but just went to bed. And Leslie decided to put everything aside and pulled out something that had fascinated her all her conscious life. It was a big sketchbook, and there was a lot written on the second one. So, what story should I write today? She stroked her belly. Even as a child, when her father showed her drawings and made them, and she wanted colorful pictures and interesting stories, the girl knew what she would do. She loved writing and composing children's fairy tales and then illustrating them. That had always been her outlet, and now she decided to relax in this way. That was it. The girl sat for a very long time. Finally, she finished and admired her work. What are you mumbling about? She heard the voice of a young man who obviously could not sleep. Nothing sleep, she said. She didn't want to explain anything to anyone. Then she got up, washed her face, and went to bed. She began to get used to this room. She even liked it here. In the morning, she got up, decided to make breakfast for the young man. Then she called him, fed him. For some reason, she liked taking care of him. And then she decided to ask him to do something she had wanted to do for a long time. "Do you want to go to the hairdresser?" she asked him, because the young man's hair was really in a terrible condition. "Maybe I will," he shrugged. He didn't like being told what to do and what not to do. "Stop drinking," she asked, but it came in a commanding tone that Leslie sensed. "Who are you to tell me that?" The guy got aggressive. It turned out she was telling him again. "Calm down." Leslie didn't know how he was in anger. That's why she kept silent. She thought he would understand what to do and what not to do because she gave him a hint. That was it. He turned away. It was obvious he was feeling bad again. "Let's go for a walk," Leslie suggested. She wanted something to distract the young man so he wouldn't reach for the bottle again. And she needed some fresh air. He just opened his mouth and realized he didn't know how to tell her what he needed. "I buy it." The girl understood what he meant. They went outside. First, they went to a barbershop. Anthony got his hair cut there. He promised to shave at home. Then they sat down in the same place as last time. Leslie had tea, the young man a beer. After that, they went to the park. There was a lot to see. "I forgot how to walk around the city like that," he said, looking around. To be honest, he couldn't even remember when he had ever walked normally. "There, you see how well I work on you," she smiled, trying to get Anthony to talk. Leslie then went with him to a cafe to have dinner because she didn't feel like cooking at home tonight. They went to the cafe that served good food and placed their order. And while getting ready, Leslie started talking again. But now it was the boy's turn before hers. "Tell me about yourself," Anthony asked her. He was curious about this girl and where she came from in his life. "What is there to tell?" And Leslie began, from the time her mother died to the time her father kicked her out and fired her. It was a little painful to talk about all that, but she persevered. "So you're a rich Pinocchio," laughed Anthony. "I don't know," she also smiled. "Don't get upset. Everything will be fine," he said optimistically, but Leslie saw that his eyes were very sad. "Aren't you going to tell me anything about yourself?" she asked him in response. "Not yet." He lowered his head to avoid looking at her. "Okay, if you change your mind, tell me," she smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Can we go home?" He looked up at her again. "Tell me, what do you think about me coming to your place and renting so brazenly?" She wanted to ask for a long time. "That's all right. It's even more fun," he grinned. They went home. It was late. The streetlights were on. It was beautiful and romantic. Leslie went for a walk, wondering if she could live with someone like Anthony. Walking in the city like this every day, admiring the view and talking about beautiful things. "Where do you get the money? You don't work anywhere." She was also very interested in this question. "So Shabashu, sometimes I have enough." He was not lying, because every day he went out, but all that he earns wasted on parties. "I see, I also have to work." They went into the entrance, and in a minute they were home. As Leslie took her place at the table and Anthony on the couch, the room was silent. Only she could be heard fiddling with her pencil on the paper. "What are you doing in there?" The man, who was almost sober today and therefore couldn't think of anything else when he heard that squeak, asked her. "Nothing. You won't be interested." She didn't want to be distracted because she couldn't concentrate for long after that. What if he looked at the girl? If she was designing a house, there was no way she could do what the clients wanted her to do. "May I see it?" he asked, already getting up from the sofa. "Sure, if you understand something." She leaned back in her chair so he could look at it. Anthony watched and was silent for a long time. Then he went into the kitchen, got a stool, and sat down next to her. He was interested in this project and wanted to understand it better. "What do they have here?" He pointed to the plan in the middle. "Kitchen. This is the bathroom," she explained, ticking off the places she had already shown. "May, I see." He pointed his finger at the drawing. "You know, you sit there looking smart, but it turns out you're distracting me. There's less and less time to finish, and it's not bad money," Leslie told him. "Wait," he took the pencil out of her hand. "What are you doing?" She could see he was trying to fix something. "Can you believe this?" He lifted his head and now looked Leslie straight in the eye. Yes, she said, thinking she would fix it later. See, he drew one line, then another. Right, that's the idea. And how could I not see that for myself? She snatched the pen away from him and now began to draw herself. Anthony continued to sit next to her. He pointed. He said something. Leslie did. It turned out that she would not do this project herself, but he would help her. And imagine, he began to fantasize. What else could be done in the house? Leslie didn't know it, but that was what her mother used to do. Stop it. The girl laughed and cried. Maybe we can finish tomorrow. Leslie looked at the clock hanging on the wall. It was almost 4 in the morning. Good, she thought. There is nothing left to think about today. She went to wash her face and then to bed, as she did on other days. Anthony came out of the bathroom in the morning with no vegetation on his face. Wow, Leslie froze on the doorstep, amazed at what could change in a man who had just shaved. What? He came back, looked at himself in the mirror and wondered if there was anything left. You look good, she smiled at him. Stop it, you're embarrassing me. He sat down at the table. They ate, and then Anthony left. Leslie didn't know where if he hadn't told her. The girl sat on the sofa for a long time still, holding the phone in her hand. She wondered whether she should call her father or not. Anthony had given her such a good idea yesterday that she realized he had a talent for it. She pushed her pride aside and dialed the number. There were long beeps. Alexander didn't pick up the phone, and when Leslie tried to reset, she heard the man answer. Dad, hello, she said softly. Hello, what did you want? He said hurriedly. Can we meet you? Asked the daughter. She wanted not only that ask to tell, but also to show him everything. Well, he probably already thought himself that he had done something bad, that he had thrown his daughter out. If he was already feared at work, then after this act, he was also considered an autocrat. People started canceling contracts, profits went down. Then tonight in our cafe, Leslie told him. It was an ordinary cafe, serving the most delicious ice cream her father used to take her to as a child. They could sit there for hours, talking and laughing. I'm here, she raised her hand as she saw a man enter the cafe. Hello, he came over and sat down at the table. It was obvious the man was in a bad mood. Are you in a hurry? The girl asked. It was important to her that she didn't distract him from anything. No, he canceled all business for the evening. He took the menu in his hand, although he knew it by heart for many years. When the order was placed and everything was in front of them, Alexander looked at his daughter. So what did you want? What did you want to talk about? He spooned the ice cream. Because of Anthony, she didn't make eye contact with her father, afraid he might get up and leave. Which Anthony, the unemployed drunk? He said it louder than necessary. Yes, she was aware that a peaceful conversation was not going to happen. Sorry. The man saw that a lot of people here had taken notice of her and were now just sitting there staring at her. Look, she put a plan on his table that she and the man had recently made together. What is this? He realized, but wanted to know why and what she was showing it to him for. A woman called me and placed an order. I could not imagine anything in this place because it is in a typical space, she showed him. And then, you could tell he didn't want to talk. And Anthony approached and did it. She drew lines with a pencil. Now that she was doing that, Alexander got curious. He really realized that he couldn't think of much to say in this room. Yes, he has talent. The man admitted he knows something about specialists, and he immediately sees how a job is done. Maybe you will give him a chance. Leslie asked at her own risk. She knew her father didn't like being asked for other people. You're a strange man. You've been kicked out of everything, but you've come to ask not for yourself, but for some son of a bitch. Her daughter saw him put on that smile she'd only seen as a child when she wanted to do something bad and her father told her to do it while no one was looking. That is, isn't it? She even got up from her chair. Come back tomorrow, set up again and let him show what he can do. Now go home. Alexander also got up from his seat, went to his daughter and hugged her. You are the best, she told him softly. I will sleep there tonight and come back tomorrow. The father was aware of his guilt in front of his daughter and therefore said nothing more. They said goodbye, and Leslie walked happily back to Anthony's house, and the man went to his apartment alone. He knew he should have said something, but he couldn't. Are you home? She entered the apartment, where it was dark. No one answered her, and the girl realized that the man was gone again. It was useless to wait for him, so she did some work and went to bed. In the morning, the smell in the room was so strong that you could breathe it in and get a hangover, or so it seemed to Leslie. She got up and opened the window to get some fresh air. Then she walked over to the young man to wake him up. "Anthony, get up." She wondered how he got in so quietly at night that she couldn't hear him at all. "Get up." He rolled over to the other side, not wanting to be disturbed. "I have big news for you," she urged him on. "Now just go away." He wrinkled his nose. There was no way he was going to wake up. Okay. She went to the kitchen to make breakfast. The girl couldn't even admit to herself that she liked him, and she did. Anthony took a shower. He came out refreshed, like half an hour ago. And he sat down at the table and stared at the girl. "I met with my father yesterday. He's expecting us today to see what you can do," the girl said. She had hoped that Anthony would be excited now, interested. And why I don't want. He didn't understand why she had come into his life in the first place and wanted to change it. "Oh, please, just go. You don't want to. You won't stay, and I'll leave you alone. Move back home," she said. Okay. He finished his omelet and went to his room to put on something decent. Anthony was a normal kid. He lived with his mother, went to school, and ran around outside with his friends. The boy liked exact sciences, and when he got to 10th grade, he chose physics and math. "Have you decided where you want to go?" His mother often asked him that back then, always interested in what her son would do. Yes, he showed her the brochure of the institute where he wanted to study. "I think you will do well." The woman kissed him on the head. Anthony was studying. He believed he was prepared for any question. In school, he had passed everything with very good. He thought that there would be no problems in the institute. But he was wrong, because everything that was so easy, as he had dreamed, did not work out. What happened? The guy they had taken the exams with walked up to him. Anthony looked at the lists, which didn't have him on them. Oh, what a shame. It really was a shame. It was possible to go to the paid ones, but the guy didn't want to stress his mother. Anthony didn't want to go home. He was embarrassed and hurt. He went to his buddy who wasn't there yet, but he would. "Hey, are you there yet?" That was all anyone was talking about at the moment. No. He put a bottle of liquor on the table that he had bought specifically to either celebrate or drown his sorrows. "Don't do that." Austin took the bottle off the table. He didn't do it himself, and he didn't advise others to do it. "I dreamed so much, believed that everything will be fine. How can I look my mother in the eye?" Sat down on a chair and almost made the young man cry. "Listen and let's go with me." Austin did not want his friend to be upset, so he offered such an option. "Yes, this is not what I wanted." Anthony waved his hand. The guy did not understand how it was possible that his dream was forced on him. "What the hell? The main thing is education." He raised his finger and pretended to say something smart. "Okay, can I stay at your place tonight?" he asked Austin. Of course, they talked for a long time. His friend showed him the things he needed, but Anthony wasn't really interested. The next day they wrote the application, and in 3 more days they had the entrance exams. "That's it. Now we just have to wait." Austin patted him on the back. Oddly enough, Anthony was accepted there, and although he wasn't very happy about it, his mother had something to say. It was so easy that the boy envied even those who would study here. "Where have you been for so long?" Worried woman, she could not find a place. When he came, he tried to be confident and not sad. And she knew that her boy was very smart and always got what he wanted. "You know, I didn't go because there were too many people for one seat. Austin called me and I went with him to engineering." He lied a little bit. "That's good." The wife wasn't upset at all. She was proud of her son. The guy started to study. First, it was just like that, out of inertia. And then it dragged on. It got interesting. In the 3rd year, the boy thanked his friend for taking him. "I told you it would drag on." They remained friends and did a lot of things together. In practice, everyone praised the young man, which was nice. He had no idea that he could have worked somewhere else. The studies at the institute came to an end. Anthony received a diploma, which he was very happy about. He immediately started working at the place where he had done his internship. It all seemed to be there, living and enjoying, and that's exactly what he did. Anthony, one of his colleagues, called him from the hospital. He rose from his seat. "Hello." He was very worried. "Your mother is in the hospital. You must come right away," said a man's voice. The young man excused himself and hurried to the local ward. When he arrived at the ward, his mother was lying on the bed. "What is wrong with her?" he asked the doctor. "A stroke," he replied. How could this happen? Why was he very worried? The woman had passed away after only 2 years. Anthony suffered a lot. In the evening, he sat in a cafe and poured out his sorrow. "Young man, is something wrong?" A pretty girl came up to him. "Yes, my mother died," he told her. "Oh, maybe we can talk to make it easier?" She sat down next to him. "Okay," he nodded. "My name is Selena," she introduced herself. "And I'm Anthony," he answered her. That night they talked for a long time. The guy even stopped drinking. He was so interested in her. Then they exchanged phones. Anthony called a cab and went home. The next day, Selena called herself and offered to meet. She didn't want to leave a handsome young man alone in such a situation. "Shall we go for a walk?" she called him. Anthony himself did not notice how he was distracted from his sorrow. He smiled. Things began to improve. "Selena, let's be friends," he told her a month later. "What are we doing?" She laughed back. "No, seriously," he hugged her. Okay, she liked him at first sight, and she didn't walk away from him. First a few months of friendship, and then she moved in with him. "I want you to be my wife." He knelt down in front of her that very night. I agreed. They laughed again. Then the wedding took place, where many friends and relatives came. Everyone celebrated and had fun. After that, Anthony and Selena began to lead adult, serious lives. He worked, brought home a good income, but Anthony had a minus. After work, they could meet with friends. Selena hated this and told her husband about it. "What are you, Selena?" He looked at her in the evening with puzzled eyes. "Nothing." It offended the girl that he spent the evening with someone else and not with her. No offense, he went to bed. Anthony had money, and not bad. One of his friends told him about investments and other virtual currencies. He started investing without big profits. For Anthony, it was like a game. But sometimes it shot up, so you could withdraw a decent amount. "Selenka, we are going on vacation," he told his wife at home. "I'm glad." She hugged her husband, loved him for arranging such surprises for her. Then from the vacation they came back. The girl did not know it yet, but she was pregnant. And when it became known, the joy of both parents knew no bounds. Now Anthony tried not to go out with friends to spend more time with his wife. She just smiled. "How are you doing?" Anthony kept asking his wife. "Everything is fine," she kept answering. "And how are you?" He often laid down next to Selena and stroked her belly. I don't know, some unusual sensation that she couldn't explain. Labor started suddenly, but the couple was prepared for it. Anthony quickly called a friend, who had also been warned. They had reached the maternity hospital, and now the friends were sitting in the car under the windows where Selena had given birth. "Who?" he shouted already in the morning. "Young man, what are you yelling about? You are scaring all the women in labor," the nurse said to him. "I can no longer sit here ignorant," he said excitedly. "You have a son," she rejoiced with him. "I love you," he kissed the nurse. "What are you doing?" She noticed that the new father was very happy. "Selena, thank you for your son," he cried out loud again. And then he knew that his wife would spend a few more days in the maternity hospital, so he had time to celebrate the birth of the heir. All day and until midnight, he and his friends frolicked at the restaurant. After that, Anthony slept in and then went to see his wife. Robert took the small package in his hands. "I love you," his wife kissed him. "And I love you. You have no idea how." They got into the car and drove home. Now Selena was home with the baby. Anthony was working. He was bringing in enough. "You know, I want to buy a car," the man said to his wife one evening. "I do not mind. It would be easier to move around." She almost always agreed with her husband. So Anthony took a friend with him and they went to buy a car. Now the family had everything they could dream of. If they had to go to the hospital or anywhere else, Anthony was always there. He loved his wife and child and would do anything for them. They were alive. Robert was growing up. He was a year and a half old when they were ready to put him in kindergarten. It was so exciting, Selena said, when his parents took him there for the first time. It was a rare occasion that her husband invited the family to go to the country house with friends. It couldn't hurt to relax, Selena rejoiced. They drove off in their car. There were a lot of people from out of town who had been invited here today. "Anthony, why are you drinking? We have a long drive back," Selena said to him quietly. "It's okay. I'll drink a little too," her husband replied. In the evening, when they all drove home, Robert was already asleep. They got into the car. Selena was very excited, sitting in the back seat with her son. They drove off and exchanged their impressions. When they got on the highway, at first everything was fine. Then Anthony saw a big car driving strangely, as if it was skidding. "Hang on." He saw it coming toward them. Then a bang, darkness. Anthony opened his eyes. He was very dizzy. Everything was white. "Where am I?" he said in a very hoarse voice, thirsty. When he lay down, he saw a girl in a white robe. "Where are my wife and child?" He realized that he was in a hospital. "The doctor will come and explain everything to you," said the same girl. When the doctor entered the room, Anthony looked at him, waiting for what he would say. "I'm sorry, but your wife and son," he fell silent. "No, it can't be," Anthony began, trying to stand up. "Calm down, you can't bring them back and you need to rest," the doctor tried to reassure him. "No, it's all my fault," the young man cried. He had been here for a while, and after he was discharged, he came home. He didn't want to be here anymore and put the apartment up for sale. The husband visited his wife and son at the cemetery, and he sat there most of the day, crying and apologizing. After the apartment was sold, he put all the money into investments. He wanted nothing more, only to die. Anthony dropped everything and moved to another city where he now lived. His aunt lived here in a shared apartment. She had died a long time ago and left a room for him and his mother, and that's where he moved in. Who his neighbor was, he never saw. From then on, Anthony just drank. He wanted to kill himself that way. "Now you know all about me." Anthony looked up at Leslie. "Yeah, you've been through a lot," she sighed. She had no idea fate could be like this. They packed their things and drove to the place where Alexander had been waiting for them for a long time. Now finally, he stood to receive them as the young men entered his office. Anthony held out his hand to the boy. Alexander shook the leaders. After that they went somewhere, the man asked, pointing, waiting for an answer from Anthony. "And?" The young man left, and Leslie stayed with her father. "Yes, he is a very smart specialist. Why does he behave like this? Just live his life." "Could not understand it, Alexander. That's why I brought him to you." She did not want to tell him the story of the guy now. "Okay, I will give him a chance." He did not look at his daughter. "Thank you." She went over to him. After that, the man and the girl went home and talked a lot about how and what can bring a person into such a situation. "Are you going to live with him?" the man asked his daughter. "I don't know yet, but probably yes," she admitted. "Oh, daughter, and why did this have to happen to us of all people?" He shook his head. The next day, Anthony didn't show up. "Hello," Leslie called him. "Yes," she heard him talking badly again. "Did you have a successful meeting yesterday?" she asked sternly. "No, just slept." He didn't lie. "Then come over. Your father is waiting for you," the girl asked. "Really?" He couldn't believe that anyone else believed in him. That's right, Leslie herself didn't believe that anything could come of this man she had seen for the first time. He arrived, work began. Everyone in town started whispering again. They said Alexander had taken Leslie back and gotten drunk with her. The women whispered. And she was pregnant, others said. The town stirred up another wave of gossip, but no one paid any attention. Even at work, the word was that Anthony had been hired because he was dating Leslie. Alexander had originally put the boy on the street, but when he started showing and explaining to other specialists how and what to do, he believed in him. Leslie, one day a father called his daughter. What, she came to him. "Why don't we talk a lot?" "Bring Anthony to visit," he asked her. Okay, she was glad. They really had hardly spoken to each other lately. Only on the condition that he not drink. His father looked at the bar. "Okay, I'll warn him," the girl sighed. She didn't bother to sit back down in the company. She told her father that she could work from home if he needed her. In the meantime, she would do her own thing. "What is it about having your own? You've been talking about it for so many years," he asked her. "I thought you would never ask." She brought him texts and pictures. Alexander stared ahead and began to read. Leslie sat down next to him and waited to hear what her father would say. It's very interesting. He looked at his daughter. And I'll tell you what, I've been doing this since I was a kid. And you keep throwing clubs between my legs like she's blaming him. I take it all back. He was now ashamed in front of his daughter. The next day, when Anthony came to work, Leslie was already waiting for him. "Hello, how are you?" She came up to him. "What are you doing here?" He was surprised. "I came to see you." She looked at him and realized that she was not wrong in her decision, even if she did not know it at the time. "Why? Everyone is talking about us." He looked around. "Let them talk. What do you care?" She didn't want to pay attention to people. "Tell me what you want to say." He was in a hurry. "Dad invites you to visit him today," she told him, and she came very close to him. "Okay, I'm coming." The young man realized that he worked for this man, but also that his daughter was pregnant by him. "That's it. Then I'll wait." She sent the man an air kiss and headed for the exit. That evening, Leslie cooked in the kitchen. No one was home. She hummed a few songs to herself. It felt good. Her father came home from work first, and an hour later Anthony came in. You could see how excited he was. "Hello," he said, looking at Leslie. "Come in." She suddenly blushed. Everyone sat down at the table, and for the first 15 minutes they were silent. "What now? Are we going to play silence?" Leslie was the first to break the silence. "No, Anthony, tell me something." Alexander looked at the future son-in-law as he thought. "I don't even know." He turned to the girl. "Dad, you better tell me how things work, how companies work in other cities." Shifted the conversation from Anthony's daughter. "Yeah, it's all good. I think if it was bad, I would have said that already." He looked and smiled. "Okay." Everyone sat around like they didn't know what to talk about. Well, enough of sitting around being shy. Alexander got up and went to the kitchen. He brought water that was not on the table. "Why be shy?" Leslie didn't understand. "When are you going to apply?" He asked Anthony directly. "We never thought about it," Anthony said with a shrug. "What do you mean? She already has a belly on her nose." And they didn't think about it. The man began to lose his composure. "Daddy, why are you pushing him?" Leslie interfered in the conversation. "And you keep your mouth shut," he reprimanded her. Leslie was silent. She looked at Anthony and realized how much pressure he was under. "Okay, let's at least go on a date," Anthony suggested. "Great. How are you?" He turned to Leslie. "Good." She blushed again. "They're going to date." They've lived in the same apartment for so long, and now they're going out. Dad muttered to himself. "Let's wait until the baby is born, and then Anthony and I will talk and make a decision." Leslie had her own version of events as usual. "Well, do what you want." He saw that there was really something between the young people. "Come on." After dinner, Leslie stood up and extended her hand to Anthony. Good. He still didn't know how to act towards a man. They walked outside, both in silence. "What do you say?" Leslie began. Sooner or later they had to talk about it. "What can I say? He made a child. He should be responsible. He talked like a robot." "What do you mean you have to do it?" The girl was offended that the young man wanted to marry her just for the child. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it." He immediately began to justify himself. "No, it's all right." She went and sat down on the bench that was there. "Leslie, you have to understand. You and I met a long time ago and made this baby, but we don't know each other at all." He sat down next to her. "You better go home." She turned to him. Leslie didn't understand why she always blushed. It was the third time it happened in one evening. "No, I'm interested in talking to you, and if you don't want to sleep, I'm willing to stay here a little longer," he admitted. "I feel good with you two." She leaned back. They were silent, but this silence was extraordinary. "Maybe you'd like to move here?" Leslie suggested. "What? Then they must be thinking." He fell silent. "And if we get married, will we live in your shared apartment?" she asked. "Don't start." He was embarrassed. Earlier, when he was getting his grief off his chest, he barely understood. But now that his brain is completely sobered up, he feels uncomfortable. "All right, come on. I'll walk you out a bit." The girl got up from the bench. From now on, they met every day, talked not only about personal issues, but also about work. The young man was very competent in this respect. One evening, as they sat together looking at the girl's drawings, she had a tingle in her stomach. "Oh," she looked at him with fearful eyes. "What?" Anthony tensed up. "I think." She couldn't finish her sentence and collapsed. "I'm going to call an ambulance now." He pulled out the cell phone. Dad's car keys are in there. She pointed to a shelf in the hallway. No, I'm not driving. The young man turned white. We have to hurry. She squeezed the words out of her. All right, on cotton balls, he ran to get the bundle. Then Anthony helped Leslie outside. He got behind the wheel. Start the engine. What are you waiting for? She couldn't sit up anymore and laid down in the back seat. Anthony was having deja vu. They're out of town. The girl is in the back seat. They're driving out onto the highway. Here he starts to shiver, but all he can think about is getting the girl to the hospital. Leslie was lying on the seat. She was breathing loudly, moaning and sighing. When she straightened up to see where they were going, she saw that the young man's cauldrons were white, so tightly had he gripped the steering wheel. When Anthony stopped, she relaxed a little as she saw the hospital building ahead. Good, she breathed out. Then it was just as quick. Leslie was put on a gurney and pushed into the delivery room, and Anthony stayed in the car. It was just like it was then. He couldn't believe it. The man realized he couldn't drive back, so he parked the car here and walked into the clinic. A young man, a woman came up to him. My wife is in labor. Can I wait here? He asked her. What do you think? Is this a 5-minute job? She smiled. What is there to do? He looked at her. I don't know. You can go home or wait. No one will mind. She nodded at him. Then Anthony decided to call Alexander to tell him what was going on. Leslie is in labor. He realized he might be distracted, so he spoke quickly. And where are you? The father asked immediately. Anthony told him everything. He was at the hospital in an hour. And how are you? It was obvious that his father was also worried. His hands were shaking and he stuttered a little. I did not know yet, he was honest. I had the same condition. The future grandfather sat down on the couch. Leslie was very bad. She thought she was going to suffocate. There were nurses and doctors. They put some apparatus on, but that didn't relieve the pain of the contractions. Why does it hurt so much? She felt like her pelvis was going to break. Just be patient, they reassured her. I can't do that. She knows it can't be avoided, but when she cries, she feels better. Finally, it started. It hurt, but it had been going on so long that the pain had just dulled. The doctor said something. Leslie could hear them as if through absorbent cotton, but she tried to do what they said, and then she felt some relief. It was like the pain was dulled. Leslie, congratulations. The girl felt something being placed on her chest. She lowered her eyes and saw her miracle. It was a girl. Katie, Leslie said, swooning. Everyone started to get excited quickly. Everything seemed to have gone well, but as it turned out, the patient was not well. The child was put in a special box. The mother was transferred to the intensive care unit. It had to be determined whether this fainting happened because of helplessness or if something else had happened. The child was completely healthy, but the mother had some kind of infection. The fever is high, so the paramedics are doing everything they can. You said your wife was in labor, Leslie? The same woman turned to Anthony. Yes, he nodded and scolded his father for calling the girl his wife. They have a daughter, but the mother is not well, she said. What's wrong with her? The father jumped up from his seat. Who are you? She was surprised and frightened. Father, he was even more nervous. Whose? The woman did not understand at first. Nastin, he was already panicking. It's all right. The doctors are with her now, the woman murmured. The men had spent the whole night here today. In the morning, they were told that the young mother has already normalized. She was transferred to the intensive care unit, and in the evening, she will already be in a normal ward. If possible, the baby can be taken away after 24 hours, but we will leave the mother here for now, the doctor said to Alexander and Anthony. Good, they said in a low voice. Katie was in her father's arms, and Anthony couldn't believe he was holding his baby. Okay, you're coming with me, Alexander ordered. Well, I didn't expect it any other way. The man got behind the wheel himself, and the young man couldn't get enough of the sleeping child. Now he realized that he had to do everything for his girls. God, let everything be all right, Alexander pleaded. Leslie is strong. She will pull through, Anthony assured him. I know that. I used to feel the same way about my wife, but you see how everything turned out. The man almost cried. When they arrived home, the nursery and everything the baby needed were ready. Anthony fed Katie and put her to bed. Well, how is she? The father asked. She's fine, asleep. He put his finger to his lips. Where are you going? The man did not understand when he saw the young man putting on his shoes. I'm going to Leslie's, he said and walked out the door. Now the man was not afraid of anything. He again took the car of the girl's father and drove to her apartment. You can't go in there, the woman stopped him. But I have to. She needs my support, Anthony said. I will be punished, she looked at him. It is night. No one is here, please, he begged her. Okay, she looked around and opened the door. Leslie, hello. He entered the room. Hello, she was very weak, she said. Will you marry me? He handed her the ring. I found the time, Leslie said in a different way. Is that a yes or a no? He couldn't understand. Of course it was. She couldn't get up, so Anthony put his arm around her. I need you, she said softly. I'll always be there for you, he whispered in her ear and left the room, for the woman was already beckoning him to pack up. He wandered under the windows of the hospital a bit more and then headed back to the house where his bride-to-be lived. Of course, he didn't want to do that, but his daughter was there. All is well. He entered the house. How is she? The father was worried. She will be home soon. He went to Anthony's nursery. Katie slept. The young father looked at her and kept an eye on her. When she woke up, he changed her, fed her, and held the girl in his arms until morning. I'm going to work. You're home, Alexander said in the morning. What about my work? Anthony did not understand him. You're going on vacation, said the boss in a proper tone. Good. Anthony was glad that he did not have to leave the girl. He had been with Katie all day. In the evening, Alexander came. He said he would move Anthony and he had to be at the hospital. Leslie was doing much better now. The doctor said they would release her home in the morning. That's great news, Anthony rejoiced. He was back to where his blood child was. You did well, his father praised him. Thank you. Anthony felt how tired he had been the last few days. Go to sleep. Alexander saw everything too. Anthony was glad of it. He went and lay down on the sofa. 3 hours later, he was back on his feet. He realized that the man had to work tomorrow. He had to let him rest too. Katie really came back in the morning. She called her father. He picked her up from the hospital. How worried we were. The men she loved told her. Thank you for everything. She walked over to the crib and took her daughter in her arms. Okay, we need to decide on a wedding date, Dad told his daughter. Wait, there's no rush, she interrupted him. How could there be? You have a child. You love each other. Why not? He didn't understand. I need to come around a bit. Leslie looked at him and her father understood. Now Anthony wanted to go home, but no one would let him go. So he stayed here. The young man would let the girl rest. He would get up at night to see his daughter. I didn't know you were so caring, Leslie said to him. At that moment, Anthony leaned over and kissed her. It was her first conscious kiss. Because I love you, he told her. His vacation was quickly coming to an end. He had to go to work. Everything went well. There were no more mishaps. Anthony and Leslie began to prepare for the wedding. She called Aubrey and told her everything. And I think we're disappeared, laughed into the phone girl. Will you help me pick out a dress? Leslie asked her. Of course, she was ready for anything. The girls came to the salon, did not choose long. The future bride immediately liked one thing. She bought it. You have such a story. I really want to hear it, asked friend Leslie. Okay, let's go for coffee, Leslie agreed, while Katie slept in the stroller. Come on, tell me the story, Aubrey urged her friend. Then Leslie told her everything, letting it all out a bit, information that wasn't that important. Wow, usually in the movies they show a poor girl meeting a prince, and with you it's all backwards, Aubrey sighed. So are you ready to be a bridesmaid? The girl asked. Of course you are, her friend made big eyes. Leslie came home happy. No one was there yet, and she decided to cook a feast. Leslie spent the whole day in the kitchen. Only for a few moments she took time for her daughter. When Alexander and Anthony returned in the evening, they were very surprised to see the table that the girl had set. Wow, the father clapped his hands. Just the right occasion. What is the occasion? Looked at his daughter. We will tell you all about it. He winked at Anthony. They all sat down at the table, the stroller with the baby in it. So, Leslie, since you decided to get married, I decided to give your husband a gift. He is now my official partner, said Alexander. I told him I didn't need anything. The young man looked at her. I congratulate you. She thanked her father for giving Anthony such a chance. I also have some pretty good news, the groom-to-be said enigmatically. And what is this news? The girl tensed up. Remember I told you that when I had grief, I sold everything and invested in virtual stocks, he reminded her. Yeah, so. She didn't know what he was getting at. I want to tell you that we are rich. He turned the screen of his phone toward her. Wow, she saw how much money was on there now. I promise you, we will have our own house and I will never leave you and Katie. He took her hand and kissed it. What's wrong with this house? Father didn't understand. You're still young yourself. You'll meet a woman. You'll have a family of your own. Anthony turned to him. What kind of women? The man waved his hand. You know, I was ready to die too. And then your daughter appeared on the horizon. He looked lovingly at Leslie. Well, it will be seen. You are so long behind with the wedding. I'd rather grow old than you go to the registry office, laughed Alexander. We will do everything, promised his daughter. Now the family lived harmoniously. When the city learned that Anthony had moved into the house of his future father-in-law, there was again a wave of rumors that only made things worse. What did these people want? Alexander sometimes asked. It's payback for popularity, Leslie laughed back at him. The wedding was big. Almost all the employees were invited. Anthony and Leslie sat at the head of the table, and next to them was a baby carriage. Happiness, the guests shouted. Everyone was happy. Alexander, may I ask you to dance? One of the female employees came up to him. Of course, he shook her hand. Look, who is your father with? Showed a nod of the groom's head. That's the head of human resources, Leslie smiled. There you go, and I told you there would be no wife, smiled Anthony. All evening Betty danced with Alexander. If at first she asked him herself, then he already came up to her. Guys, I think you were right, he turned to Anthony. We had a very nice vacation. We came home very late. Katie was lying quietly in her stroller. Way to go, baby. Let her parents do the right thing. Took her mother in his arms. After that, everyone went to bed. And within a month, everything was ready to start building the house. Anthony was now spending more and more time at the construction site. He liked the way things were going. He and his wife had planned everything together. We're having guests over tonight, Leslie's father called. A guest, I suppose, she said enigmatically. You're right, the girl imagined Daddy blushing now. She cooked dinner, set the table, and waited again for the guests. Hello. Come in. She opened the door and greeted Betty. Oh, Leslie, she came in. Alexander was embarrassed, but acted normally. Later, Anthony came home. He went to the construction site every evening after work. How are you guys doing? Leslie sat down across from the couple. Everything is fine, blushed the two already quite grown men. They spent the evening very cordially. Leslie thought the woman should come visit them more often. Ta agreed, because she had liked the man for a long time. If she hadn't had the courage then, we would still be walking alone, Betty said. You're a good girl, Leslie remembered when she found Anthony alone. Her family was doing well too, with Katie growing up and the house nearing completion. That's it, Daddy. You can officially propose to Betty. We're moving in soon, Leslie announced to him one day. Would you be okay with that? He looked at his girl. Why should I mind? She didn't understand. Well, I thought, I'll find someone else to cheat on your mother. He turned away. What are you saying? She laughed and hugged him. After that, the renovations were finished and the young people got ready to move. Betty was a great support to Leslie and her daughter. When no one else had time, she always took care of her granddaughter. Would you like me to read you a story? Leslie asked the woman one day. Of course, I've loved fairy tales since I was a child, she agreed. Leslie began to read, and at the end of one story, Betty even cried. What did you think? Wanted to hear the woman's feedback. Who is the author of these wonderful lines? Asked the listener. This is my creation, admitted the girl. What are you saying, and why is everything on the table? The woman did not understand. The woman decided that she would do everything for Leslie. She took everything the girl had and brought it to the newsroom. After a while, Leslie's stories could be seen on the store shelves. Thank you. I probably wouldn't have dared to do that, she hugged the woman. I'd like a signed copy, she laughed back. No problem. The girl immediately took the book and signed it. When the young people moved in and Betty moved in with Alexander, they visited each other all the time. Daddy, come over tonight. His daughter called him. That day was Katie's 1-year anniversary. Her mother was going to have a party for her. Everyone was there. It was nice. You know, I've always wanted to say that. The father looked at his daughter. Say it already, she smiled. Imagine, and if you had listened to me then, he almost cried and had an abortion. Believe me, I would not have. She went and hugged the man. I feel like a traitor holding Katie in my arms, Dad admitted. Anthony looked at it all and was amazed. Leslie knows my story, knows how hard it was for me and where I wanted to go. And now I think my first wife sent me to you. Of course, I never believed in mysticism, but now I just think about it, confessed the young man. I love you, his wife kissed him. And then they began to organize my father's wedding. It was a pleasant experience. Although Betty did not want to make a fuss and hold a banquet, the young people insisted. Well, shall we go and get the dress? Leslie said, pleased to see what kind of family they now had. Baby, come on, I'm old. I don't know what a dress is, said Betty, turning as red as a crab. I don't want to hear anything. Everything has to be real, the girl answered her. Before signing in, they all walked together to the cemetery to Leslie's mother. Alexander hugged the monument. You are not angry with me, he said to the pictures of his first wife. Daddy, she wishes you nothing but happiness, his daughter came up to him. After that, they all went and did everything as it should be done. The party was once again a success. Everyone was happy. I don't know why I deserve such happiness. Anthony hugged his wife and daughter. Do you remember how it all started? She looked at him. No, he laughed back, and you know it too. What's true is true, she giggled too. Little Katie was among the guests. She didn't understand much, but she was enjoying herself here too. Everyone in the small town was shocked at what was going on in this family. Kevin didn't think of himself as a bad person. He just didn't want almost $1 million to end up buried in the ground. He just believed that his family's history was coming to an end, and since this was the natural order of things, it was stupid, and generally crazy to miss his chance to finally get what he had been deprived of all the years of his marriage. And it all started about 6 months ago, when Kevin's wife Selena decided to go to the doctor. She just wanted to know why so often severe headaches and dizzy spells, why suddenly cold hands and feet and blood pressure spikes. In general, the symptoms were unpleasant, spoiled everyday life, but did not seem something very terrible. The doctor prescribed a lot of examinations, tests, and then shocked with words that the reasons for all this as if there was no. Selena's body seemed to be completely healthy according to all the data that science could extract from it. However, it soon became clear that science could be wrong. Another doctor to whom she went, not satisfied with the words of the first that she may have just nervous fatigue, was interested in one of the indicators of the blood test, and he ordered new examinations. Then Selena, comforting in advance that there is no need to worry, called for the next tests. And soon this young woman knew almost all the clinics in the city where they tried to answer the question of what is happening to her. Meanwhile, her health was deteriorating. In one place, the doctors gathered a whole consilium. And finally, as tactfully as possible, they presented the results. It turned out that Selena's case is unique. This is almost never seen on planet Earth. It turned out that at the age of 29, that is, unusually late, in her body awakened some corrupted gene. Specialists said that this is great news. Rare unfortunates suffering from this genetic disease usually did not reach adulthood, and Selena's doing so well. And so, as a result of all this, she ended up seeing a doctor who seemed willing to help her. Okay, that's enough. The young woman interlocked her fingers so tightly that it hurt. She straightened her back and looked the gray-haired professor, who was telling her about all this, straight in the eyes. How long do I have left? 3-4 months, he said. Harry had seen all sorts of things in his life, but this patient had impressed him with no tears, no lamentations about how she didn't understand why she had to do this, just dry, businesslike questions. There is one drug. The patient receives it in the form of an injection. You see, with your disease, as time goes by, the symptoms get more and more, you feel worse, and then it gets very bad. That's just a simple way of putting it. And this drug, it slows down the process. But it won't save me, right? Selena grinned. The human body, unfortunately, is not yet fully understood. Harry took off his glasses, took out a handkerchief with initials embroidered by his wife, also a doctor, and began to wipe the glasses with concentration. You see what the matter is? Currently, scientists around the world are trying to learn, so to speak, to change the human body at the most basic level, that is, by manipulating the genes. However, often all this exists only at the theoretical level. I'm afraid it will be too long before such methods will be allowed anywhere for the real treatment of severe cases, such as yours. You see, it's still not fully understood. In fact, you can't do experiments on living people, can you? And as for the drug I'm recommending, it will. Kevin didn't think of himself as a bad person. He just didn't want almost 1 million to end up buried in the ground. He just believed that his family's history was coming to an end, and since this was the natural order of things, it was stupid, and generally crazy to miss his chance to finally get what he had been deprived of all the years of his marriage. And it all started about 6 months ago, when Kevin's wife Selena decided to go to the doctor. She just wanted to know why so often severe headaches and dizzy spells. Why suddenly cold hands and feet and blood pressure spikes? In general, the symptoms were unpleasant, spoiled everyday life, but did not seem something very terrible. The doctor prescribed a lot of examinations, tests, and then shocked with words that the reasons for all this as if there was no. Selena's body seemed to be completely healthy according to all the data that science could extract from it. However, it soon became clear that science could be wrong. Another doctor, to whom she went, not satisfied with the words of the first that she may have just nervous fatigue, was interested in one of the indicators of the blood test, and he ordered new examinations. Then Selena, comforting in advance that there is no need to worry, called for the next test. And soon this young woman knew almost all the clinics in the city where they tried to answer the question of what is happening to her. Meanwhile, her health was deteriorating. In one place, the doctors gathered a whole concilium, and finally, as tactfully as possible, they presented the results. It turned out that Selena's case is unique. This is almost never seen on planet Earth. It turned out that at the age of 29, that is, unusually late, in her body awakened some corrupted gene. Specialists said that this is great news. Rare unfortunates suffering from this genetic disease usually did not reach adulthood, and Selena's doing so well. And so, as a result of all this, she ended up seeing a doctor who seemed willing to help her. Okay, that's enough. The young woman interlocked her fingers so tightly that it hurt. She straightened her back and looked the gray-haired professor, who was telling her about all this, straight in the eyes. How long do I have left? 3-4 months, he said. Harry had seen all sorts of things in his life, but this patient had impressed him with no tears, no lamentations about how she didn't understand why she had to do this, just dry, businesslike questions. There is one drug. The patient receives it in the form of an injection. You see, with your disease, as time goes by, the symptoms get more and more, you feel worse, and then it gets very bad. That's just a simple way of putting it. And this drug, it slows down the process. But it won't save me, right? Selena grinned. The human body, unfortunately, is not yet fully understood. Harry took off his glasses, took out a handkerchief with initials embroidered by his wife, also a doctor, and began to wipe the glasses with concentration. You see what the matter is? Currently, scientists around the world are trying to learn, so to speak, to change the human body at the most basic level, that is, by manipulating the genes. However, often all this exists only at the theoretical level. I'm afraid it will be too long before such methods will be allowed anywhere for the real treatment of severe cases, such as yours. You see, it's still not fully understood. In fact, you can't do experiments on living people, can you? And as for the drug I'm recommending, it will at least reduce the symptoms. And at the end of the prescribed period of time, he realized that he could and even should be brutally honest with his patient. They wouldn't be so painful. Is it very expensive? The woman asked after a little silence. About 1 million rubles, Harry replied. Unfortunately, it's almost impossible to raise money through foundations for such a thing. You know, it's not about a cure. It's only about temporary relief. Thank you, Selena said, standing up and smiling at the doctor. Open, clean, bright. Thank you for explaining everything. After the appointment with Professor Harry, Selena had to go home in a cab. She could no longer travel around the city in public transportation because at any moment she could feel very ill. She could be on the verge of fainting. She might need to go outside. The disease was destroying her vestibular apparatus as well. Selena was silent, looking out the window. Behind the car window there was a small public garden, flooded by the shy spring sun. "Stop here, please," she asked and got out of the car on the curb. She took out her wallet to pay. "I'm not going any further. I mean, I will, but I'd like to walk a bit. The weather's so nice today. I'll call another car later." "Are you sure?" the cab driver asked. He worked as a private driver and was a neighbor of Selena's who lived across the street. Sam gave Selena a minimum fare ride and really sympathized with her. "Yeah, you go. Why would you be idle? I might take a longer walk." "No," Sam shook his head. "I'll wait for you." "What did the doctor say, by the way?" "I'm sorry if this isn't." "I'm glad everyone's worried about me," Selena joked. "It makes me feel important." "Thanks, Sam. The doctor said there's a chance. We just need to organize everything properly now." Selena decided there was no reason to tell the whole truth, at least not right now. It would lead to unnecessary, heavy, soul-crushing conversations. And right now, she wasn't ready for that. "That's right," the man nodded. "Never give up. All right. You take a walk. I'm going to go to the burger place. It's delicious, home-style cooking." He immediately embarrassed himself, realizing that he had said it for nothing. It came out as a tease because Selena could not eat fatty. Flurry body refused to accept heavy food. "Bon appetit. Eat $1,000 for me too." She waved her hand at him and slowly walked down the alley. At this time of year, lilacs were blooming exuberantly, and it seemed that the bushes were just tossed with white, softly purple, pink sea foam. Selena squinted at the bright, blinding sun. Its rays caressed her face, warmed it, and it seemed that it was just paradise. Such happiness, when you just walk quietly, when you breathe fully and just exist, here and now, in one moment and the next that merge into your life, which it was time to stop fooling yourself, as Selena chided herself, was coming to an end. In the beginning, as soon as the diagnosis was known, she was advised to see a psychologist, and he began to talk about the 5 degrees of acceptance, about how important it is not to reject what happens to you. Selena did not go to him for a second appointment. It just wasn't her specialist. He just said something else nasty to her. Selena walked back through the square, exhausted, as if here, on this small island of nature in the middle of the big city, was the last of her strength, ability to fight for herself and hold on at all costs. When she and Kevin had gotten married 6 years ago, he'd said he wouldn't feel like a man if they lived with her parents. Living with his parents wasn't an option either, but Kevin's cousin, who had a family life that hadn't worked out and had to move into the vacated living space with 3 children from 2 fathers, was waiting for them to move out. For the wedding, they were asked to give envelopes of cash rather than things. From the wedding trip, at the insistence of Kevin and his mom, Selena refused. "You can eat it all. You can skip it all," her mother-in-law said sternly. "You have to think about the future." That's how it turned out that on their honeymoon, Selena had a headache about the mortgage. For her, by the way, they paid it first equally, and then, when the same sister Kevin overdue credit, taken on a very expensive TV, the mortgage was completely on Selena's shoulders. "I can't leave my family in the lurch." Kevin pounded his fist on the table. And then, as if unnoticeably, Selena's paycheck began to leave only a little for herself. And if before she had thought it ridiculous to hear stories about women who worked and asked their husbands for pantyhose, now she was among them. Selena only once tried to talk to Kevin about the fact that it was not fair. After all, he had already paid off the loan for his sister. But Kevin had yelled at her then, saying that he told her it was too early for them to have children until she stopped wasting money and learned to manage it properly. "What are you up to, eh?" he asked threateningly and banged his fist on the table again, which was becoming his habit. "Do you want to sit on my neck on maternity leave? I know people like you. You don't have enough money." He curled his lips contemptuously. "Well, that's just it. You married a simple laborer, not a millionaire." "You're not a laborer," Celine said. For the first time in this quarrel, she allowed herself to speak to her husband in that tone. "My father was a laborer, in a factory from the age of 16. And you're a corporate culture manager. What kind of worker? Then, when her husband had dinner and was watching TV, she came over to make up. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. All people work differently. You work hard, and I really appreciate it. Selena felt guilty, but she also saw her husband's guilt in what had happened. He was talking about the sick again, about the baby. What was all that talk about maternity leave when Kevin had been saying for 3 years that he just wasn't ready to be a father? He said he didn't have the parental instinct yet, and sometimes he joked about how his wife had only breeding on her mind, but he wouldn't raise another man's child if she cheated. Upon returning home from Professor Harry's, Selena didn't hesitate. She called her parents, then her friends, then her colleagues at school. She didn't have to think up a long, ornate speech. What all this? She said everything simply was at the professor. Yes, he says that everything is bad, but everything can become a little better if there is one drug and it costs money. Yes, we need to raise about 1,000,000 rubles and the deadline is burning. She'd also added that if the collected money is not enough in the end, then of course, she will return to everyone how much she took and herself. Well, then it turns out that it was not fate. Her parents didn't live far away and her mom's first impulse was to come. But Selena said she just needed to be alone. She wanted to see them too, to cuddle and perhaps she could and should even cry together. But let it all be tomorrow. But today, most of all, she just wanted to sleep. Sleep in general lately seemed to her a luxury, a bliss. As long as Celine slept, she felt no pain, no nausea. And falling asleep this time, the young woman smiled at her gloomy thoughts that it seems very soon she would have something similar to such a dream, an infinitely long rest. Exactly 1 month later, the 1,000,000 was collected. Selena was amazed, but acquaintances and friends and very distant acquaintances and friends were carrying the money. People were not scattered with words of encouragement or persuaded to believe in the impossible or ask for any receipts. They just brought whoever and however much they could. His father said that he and his mother had sold his grandmother's set, which was a valuable antique and had fetched almost 120,000. Imagine that, Kevin said. Turns out people have money and are willing to just throw it away. He said this at dinner. That evening, Selena felt very well and even managed to prepare 2 dishes, spicy goulash for her husband and steamed chicken breast with vegetables for herself. She also decorated the table with 2 roses in a vase. That's how much money she had on her card after the other purchases. Yes, this day, Selena felt so good that she even went shopping. It wasn't necessary, but it made her literally feel alive. Just going about the chores of everyday life that were familiar, ordinary in the past. Throw it away? She asked, confused. How else? Kevin grinned and sent a spoonful of goulash into his mouth. The gravy ran down his chin, but he didn't seem to notice. It's clear it won't save you. It won't, Selena muttered. She set the instruments aside. I don't understand. Kevin, what are you talking about? I told you that. I already heard that. It'll relieve the symptoms. They're just screwing with you. Don't you get it? Selena suddenly felt sick. It's like a hot helmet was dropped on her head. They're cheating you out of money. They have the usual drugs. They have everything. They just give it away out of desperation. Her husband kept muttering. You know, you're right. Selena raised her chin. Desperation, yes. Would you look for anything? Agree to anything, if it happened to you? Lucky it didn't happen to me. Her husband nervously pushed the empty plate away from him. Lucky you didn't give birth to children, invalids, or you'd be left with some invalid. What? Selena opened her eyes. My disease is not hereditary. It's a unique. You're the one who's unique. Kevin got up from the table. You're disgusting to look at. If I were you, I'd be in your shoes, and you're running around, jumping around, then you fall down and I follow you around. What am I, your nurse? I should have put you in a hospice earlier. Is that what this is? He pointed his finger at the flowers. You're making funeral arrangements already. Why 2? I didn't have enough money for more, she answered quietly. Kevin, please, I'm sorry if I've offended you. I feel something. I don't feel well. Walk me out, please. I need to lie down. Kevin froze. The air around him seemed electrified and could have been struck with a painful, whipping lightning bolt of his irritation. but he helped his wife into the bedroom. He even threw a blanket over her. "I'll soon release you," whispered Celine and ducked her face into the pillow. She didn't want to push pity. It was just the way it came out. Suddenly she ran out of strength, completely, to hold on, to smile, to tell everyone that she would fight and not let some stupid wrong gene ruin her. The woman's shoulders began to shudder. "I'm going to go," came Kevin's voice. "I have to go to a friend's house." Selena didn't answer anything. It only seemed to her that his voice oozed lies. She only thought her husband was disgusted to be around her. Kevin left the house, walked to the subway, and got off at the end station. He dialed the number he had memorized by heart from the street and didn't risk putting it on his contact list. He was answered by a soft, beautiful female voice. It was this voice in Maria that had attracted him at first. She was a giggly, a little frivolous girl from the accounting department who had been working at the same firm as Kevin for 6 months. Yesterday's graduate of a prestigious university with a luscious figure. He couldn't resist. His wife got sick, and Kevin decided it was too much. He got married with the expectation that he'd have a normal, wholesome, healthy, and ordinary family. No, he understood that people get sick sometimes, but with a cold, you could break something. Then there's hepatitis and all that. And this, an unknown rare disease that was sure to lead his wife to her grave. He wasn't ready for that. At first, Kevin held on a little, was, as they call it, on the same page with his family and friends, who told Selena that the diagnosis could be wrong, that modern medicine was working wonders. But then he ran out of strength. He realized that what was happening next was just a fruitless attempt to fix something. Kevin was tired of living with the fact that his family expected him to take drastic action. What kind of action? He didn't know. It just seemed to him that he should be a kind of super husband who would be with his beloved until the end. And he did not find in himself for this, as he explained to himself, the moral strength. And all this time he had no intimacy with Selena. For about a year now, all the conversations in the family were constantly moving to the topic of treatment options. And the money? It was evaporating at the rate of dry wood in a ravenous fire, and it was all to no avail. Kevin was tired of listening to his wife talk about the things she had not had time to do in her life. Skydiving, tangoing in a scarlet dress, scuba diving, tasting a real ripe mango. He thought it was very silly. What was the point of talking about something that would never happen? He was more concerned about the fact that a year ago Selena took a loan to make a good repair in her parents' apartment, bought them some household appliances. You see, Mommy's hands are sick, arthritis, so she needs a dishwasher. The loan was still 2 years away from being paid off, and Kevin feared that the payments would end up on him after his wife died. Payments for strangers. Kevin was very angry, and now he was also pissed off that his wife was going to get $1 million and he was going to go for the only shot he had. What a load of crap. It was like an electric shock when he thought about the fact that this money, it wouldn't save her anyway, but it could help him to arrange his personal happiness, so to speak, and secure Maria's favor. Oh, that Maria. She was nothing like his wife. Selena was beautiful, but too modest. She didn't wear revealing outfits, almost never used makeup. Her hair was in a ponytail or a bundle. She couldn't stand jokes with intimate overtones. She didn't recognize alcohol. In general, she was so all right. Kevin circled around Maria like a bumblebee around a flower, but so far there was nothing more than kisses and permission to feel her appetizing forms. Maria hinted that she was a major league girl, and if Kevin wanted to see what she could do. The last straw was the fact that Maria had signed up for floor dancing, supposedly to maintain her figure, and teasingly said that she already knew how to sit on the twine, and in general her body had become so flexible. After stopping by the nearest store for a bottle of wine and her favorite bitter chocolate, Kevin headed to his almost mistress with a smile on his face. A week later, after a heavy conversation over a family dinner, Selena called Professor Harry and he said that the drug would be available for purchase in the very near future. That was good news. On this day, Selena was feeling quite ill. She seemed to herself like a perforated hourglass, the grits from which were escaping even before their due date. And yet, Selena was still hanging on. She strolled leisurely through the apartment, maybe do some chores. But immediately the woman dismissed the thought. She had had enough of imitating a normal life. She wasn't anymore. What was really worth doing was to finish some things. Selena opened the laptop she'd bought with her bonus money 2 years ago. Her husband grumbled that the equipment was prohibitively expensive, and why would such a simple teacher, who does not even play computer games? But Selena knew why she needed it. The new computer had very good color reproduction, so when she watched documentaries about tropical birds and other beauties, the picture was like real life. Plus, the matrix was of the latest generation, so the woman's eyes didn't get tired or sore even if she had to spend hours at the laptop. But she didn't open it now to relax or to have a tutoring session with a student. Right now, Selena was going to write to an overseas charity and withdraw her application to raise money for treatment. It was practically impossible to raise anything there anyway. And for this precious injection, which promised to prolong and ease her life at least a little, the money had already been brought by family and friends. So, Selena opened a personal account on the foundation's website. It was a foundation set up to help people with a wide variety of illnesses from the mildest to the most severe. Selena had already found the form to request account deletion, but then her attention was caught by the #1 notification of a letter for her. This was another feature of the foundation. All correspondence was conducted only on its resources, no regular email. Selena opened the message and frowned. Her excellent knowledge of English, she was a teacher after all, allowed her to quickly understand the message, but at the same time, nothing was clear. The representative of the foundation said that a partner from a private medical organization was willing to help Selena. However, it was not about providing the medicine or raising funds for it. The message said that they were willing to treat her, that a private clinic in India, funded by a private benefactor, might be willing to do it. The letter said that the treatment would be absolutely free for Selena. She would only have to fly in and the tickets would be paid for, and then she would just have to trust. It was all so confusing. Delirious, Selena closed the lid of her laptop and rubbed her face with the palms of her hands, her cheeks burning. Why did it feel so disturbing when she read this? In general, what was this even about? She didn't need this anyway. Stop believing in miracles that don't exist. Professor Harry said there was no cure for her illness. There are developments somewhere, but they are not even approved by the government of the United States and European countries. That is, in fact, as if illegal. Guarantees and even hopes are nil. Being a lab rat? No way. It's better to get something that can really help. Selena looked at the laptop as if it might bite. Okay, that's enough. She would definitely delete her profile from this site. Close the account altogether. She'll have some tea and a little nap first. She's getting a headache again. When Selena woke up, it was 10 o'clock in the evening. Her mouth was dry, her heart was pounding as if she had run a 100-meter race with a 100-pound weight. But at least she didn't have a headache. Selena grinned bitterly. She wished they had invented a device so that people could choose what they wanted, for example, to have an earache instead of a tooth or toes instead of a headache. There were some sounds coming from the kitchen, and when Celine peeked in there was, "Sam?" She rounded her eyes. "What are you doing in your house?" The neighbor smiled. He looked pretty funny in his apron and kittens, but the frying pan, where some vegetables were stewing in a flavorful sauce, suited him just fine. Selena realized she was hungry. "I was in my house, and then I heard some commotion on the landing. I looked out, and there was yours, Kevin, he's got a duffel bag in his hand. He looked at me and said, 'I'm going on a business trip.' I said, 'What business trip?' 'Your wife's sick.' 'I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.' And he said I had to, 'I'm leaving.' And step into the elevator. Honestly, he told me that if I was so worried about you, I should come to you." Sam looked at him warily. "I'm sorry for barging in and running the place, but Kevin just said he was tired of babysitting." "That's what I'm used to hearing," Selena replied. She watched the man at the stove with a smile, leaning her shoulder against the jamb. "It's just that the neighbors haven't cooked for me before in my life." "I haven't cooked for the neighbors before either," he answered her with a smile. "But I thought it might be hard for you. You haven't gotten your medicine yet, so I thought I'd cook. I wanted to wake you up first." And then he nodded at the refrigerator. "I thought I'd see what I had. I remember you said that you could stew vegetables, so I cooked them. I boiled some buckwheat pasta." There's only a pinch of salt in the vegetables, but it's good, and some spicy herbs. Thank you. Selena went to the china cabinet. All right, I'll go. Sam was suddenly embarrassed as he took off his apron. Okay, but you can stay. I'll have the vegetables. And you, Selena pointed to the refrigerator. Take what you like. There's cheese and sausage and some nice lecho and boiled potatoes. And Sam stammered as if he was making a very important decision. Should he go to the moon or stay on Earth? Well, if only for the company. Thank you. I love lecho. My mom used to make it, so you'll definitely like it. Selena put the plates for two on the table and put the cutlery down. They ate in silence for a while. Don't worry, Sam said carefully. He'll be back. I mean, it's probably something important at work. I don't care. Selena dismissed it. In fact, it's even better. Tomorrow I'll go to the bank to drop off the money and Harry will give me the details to pay for the medicine. That's great. Sam's happy. Everything will be fine. Believe me, it can't be otherwise. After dinner, Sam claimed the right to do the dishes and then left. Selena went to bed with mixed feelings. Her husband had left, as if he had run away, and her neighbor had shown such care. Why are people so different? And tomorrow, she knew, everything would change. Selena drifted off, to sleep with the fantasy that maybe the medicine the professor had named would make her feel truly healthy. Well, at least for a little while. One last time. In the morning, Selena woke up unexpectedly early to find the sun was just rising above the horizon, casting a rose-golden light on the houses and yard. Selena glanced at her watch. The bank she needed was already open, which meant she could make the most of every minute of the day. Humming a tune from her favorite vaudeville show, Selena ran her hands into the bowels of the closet. There, behind the warm plaids, was the tea box she put all the money in. There it was. Selena took the box to the table where her purse was already open. Thinking on the way that it was so light. Light, the woman froze. Took a deep breath and opened the box. Empty. Not a single penny. She brought it closer to her eyes, and there, in her husband's handwriting, was a single word, I'm sorry. Selena found it hard to breathe, and slowly, feeling like she was in slow motion, she settled to the floor. I'm sorry. Kevin took the whole $1,000,000, every penny of it. He stole it? Tears came to her eyes like a fog screen. Selena didn't cry. They just streamed from her eyes as if someone had turned the faucet on full blast. She lost track of time. She just sat on the floor, and her fingers frantically crumpled, rubbing the box that still held the aroma of a mixture of black tea and Tega herbs. She realized that this was the end. Professor Harry had told the patient how things would be if she didn't get the medicine. First, she would have difficulty walking. Her limbs would lose their normal sensitivity. Then her internal organs would start to fail. Like a terrible lottery, maybe it would be the liver first, maybe the pancreas. The headaches would worsen to the point where prescription painkillers would be useless. Sure, maybe the body would respond to something, but it was unlikely. And then, Selena wrapped her arms around her shoulders and howled softly. She suddenly realized more clearly than ever the inevitability of a terrible, agonizing end. She also didn't understand. Why was Kevin doing this to her? Was she such a bad wife that she didn't deserve a little kindness from her husband? Because she already does. She's going to leave him alone soon. She'll be gone. The guiding thread by which Selena was able to snap out of her hysterical stupor was the shrill ringing of the phone. Selena didn't see the point in answering it, especially since it was probably mommy calling, or daddy, or the doctor. What would she tell them all? What? But she reached into her purse, pulled it down, dropped it in her lap, and pulled out her smartphone. The phone number was unfamiliar. Yes, sobbed Selena into the receiver. The voice on the other side clearly belonged to a foreigner. Selena didn't understand at first. What did he want? But then, like a lightning bolt, she got a call from the foundation, the same one from which she was going to delete her application yesterday. Sniffing her nose, Selena asked questions, and the man answered her, and gradually it became clear what he wanted. The representative of the very medical organization that did not want to clearly identify itself hurried with the answer. Does Selena want to get treatment? They promise they will help. Only her consent is needed. To come. Where to? Calcutta. But they told her a lot of things again. They promised they'd help her. And all she has to do is consent to treatment on their terms. She has to consent to any interventions. It's safe. They'll take care of her. Selena could hardly think. She only realized that she had no money for the only drug that could help her now. And she also realized that she was promised to be saved. I agree. Selena almost shouted into the phone. I do. Yes, I want to. What do I have to do? Sam moved into the house exactly the next day after the young couple Selena and Kevin moved in. Only he didn't buy the apartment with a mortgage like they did, but with cash, with the money he had left over from his divorce from his wife. Divorce with her went through the life of 40-year-old man. Typhoon first suddenly revealed the truth that the 6-year-old Barry is not his son. And then the former love of his life said that blood descent, say, nothing means that the father is the one who brought up, and so on. And therefore, as she said, Sam is obliged to take care of his son, and that's it. Sam strongly disagreed with this opinion. He decided that he would cut all ties with the traitor and filed for paternity. There was a court, many gossip among the relatives. In one he won, but the housing had to sell only so managed to normally divide the jointly acquired property. But the fact that moved from a 3-room in a modest studio, Sam was not saddened. He was now free. He could, as they call it, start his life from scratch, and he did. And he did. In the far drawer of the dresser went to dust a diploma of higher education engineer. Sam decided that he needed a whole new sphere of activity and decided to become an ordinary cab driver. Thankfully, there was a car bought before the wedding. The man took good care of the car, did not skimp on good repairs, so that in fact, it was not inferior to very fresh car analogs. And since a good half of the family and even his own parents sided with his unfaithful wife, Sam had to make another difficult decision to reduce communication with them to the very minimum, and when trying to start educational conversations in general, began to play silence for a couple of weeks. And in time, it was as if his family realized that he was a grown man and it was too late to change him. And that's how Sam lived. He went out for shifts when he needed to earn money, and the rest of the time, he just lay on the couch with a game console in his hands or read Scandinavian detectives. He didn't need heartwarming romances with other women. It seemed to him in general that in life no longer need anything, that as lives, so well and be kind, leave everyone pleased with their moralizing. And then she came into Sam's life, Selena. Actually, he was just a polite neighbor for the first few years. He said, hello, how are you? Good evening, and other such neighborly, formally polite, but essentially meaningless phrases. But whether it was reading detectives that developed his natural powers of observation, or whether it was just too obvious, but over time Sam began to guess that his neighbor's marriage was far from perfect. He picked up on the sarcastic, mocking phrases Kevin threw at his wife. Occasionally, Sam would cross paths with the couple in the yard or entryway. Scraps of phrases formed an understanding that Kevin scolded his wife for liking to eat fresh fruit year-round, for always talking about her work as a teacher, sharing her worries about her little students. One day, Sam went out on the balcony just to look at the wispy autumn fog creeping over the city, and on the neighboring balcony stood Selena and cried, roared at the top of her voice. She must have forgotten, silly girl, that neighbors happened to be out on the balcony. Then she spotted him, threw, "Excuse me," and ran back to her apartment, and he just stood there. One did not need to be a psychic or a close friend of this family to realize who caused the tears of this young woman with such a charming smile, which, alas, was so rarely seen on her beautiful face. That Selena was ill, Sam had learned by accident. He was just coming home one day when she started to slump to the ground in front of him. He picked her up practically in his arms and sat her on a bench. He wanted to call an ambulance, but she said it wouldn't help and told him everything. It felt like some kind of powerful energy was radiating, that Selena really needed to talk about everything. Then Sam offered to drive her wherever she needed to go for examinations and treatment. He said that it would be nice for him to help her, and it would be convenient for her, because it was better to drive with a person who was well aware of the passenger's condition, who could stop when necessary at the curb to let her get some air, who would not be frightened if she started to faint, but would carefully following her instructions, bring her to her senses. He was afraid that Selena would not agree or decide to ask her husband's permission. Who knows to what extent this Kevin tyrannizes his wife to control her. But Selena said yes, and from then on, Sam became her personal driver. Sam woke up that morning and immediately remembered the good times he'd had at Selena's house yesterday. Isn't that the fantasy of an infatuated man? Husband on a business trip, and you go to his wife's house and cook dinner, for example, because she's sick. Sam chuckled at his thoughts. Then he looked at the clock. He jumped up, tangled in the blanket, and almost collapsed. 11 in the morning. Selena had said she had to go to the bank today and then to the professor's office. He could send the requisites for the medicine, but he also wanted to consult on how the process of fighting for the patient's life would look like. Having quickly cleaned himself up, dressed, and skipped breakfast with only a mug of coffee with milk and a cracker, Sam left the apartment. A couple steps to the side and he was there. He pressed the bell button. Selena didn't answer. He was about to dial her number, but the door finally opened. "Hi," she said. "I'm not going anywhere," she added thoughtfully. She was clutching a few hangers of sweaters in one hand, a travel bag in the other. "Thanks for helping," she muttered absent-mindedly and tried to close the door. Sam didn't want to be an intrusive neighbor with the makings of a maniacal stalker, but then he just put his foot in the door and it wouldn't close. "Celine, what's wrong?" he asked worriedly. It was immediately obvious something was wrong. The woman in front of him was disheveled, teary-eyed, and also, what did the travel bag have to do with it? Actually, they were literally going to the bank and the clinic. Selena looked at him absent-mindedly, then she smiled, so strange and a little crazy. "I'm leaving." "Where to?" Sam asked, still being on the landing all but the bottom of the leg. She was in the neighbor's apartment. Selena blanched. A storm of feelings flashed across her face, like she regretted what she had said, like she wanted to say something else, like she wanted to keep crying and laughing at the same time. "Come in." She opened the door, stepped aside. Sam entered. She closed the door and walked into the hall. It was impolite and violated all personal boundaries, but he looked curiously into the bedroom, where the contents of what must have been the entire closet were lying on the bed. On the coffee table were piles of papers. Sam picked up one paper. It was something medical. He hastily put the strangers back. "What's going on? Is this about Kevin?" "No," she shook her head. "But yes." Selena took a deep breath, splayed her hands. "He took all the money." "What? What are you talking about?" Sam asked, but he already knew the answer, of course. It was probably about the money set aside for that very medicine. Sam, by the way, had also brought money for it from himself. He just couldn't stay away. Selena's husband, by the way, didn't know about it, or he probably would have forbidden to approach her at all. But Sam would still approach her, because he just couldn't do it any other way. He couldn't stay out of this woman's life in misery. And it wasn't about love, that romantic nonsense where you feel the need to possess someone so much that you can't stand the sight of them. No, Sam was driven by something else entirely. He just felt a deep affection for Selena, and he felt it was so personal, so intimate. He wasn't gonna tell anyone, especially not to Celine. Finally, from Selena's rambling story, Sam understood what had happened. It wasn't easy to understand and realize, however. It had come as a real shock to him to hear Selena admit that the cure Professor Harry had promised wasn't really salvation, that it was, in fact, only postponing the inevitable. But he wasn't angry at Selena for not telling the whole truth. Sam himself had suspected all along that Selena's illness was probably possible, incurable. Now he'd just gotten confirmation for his worst assumptions. And before Sam could digest the information he'd received, Selena told him about the strange message on the Foundation's website and the phone call. Wait, he caught hold of her hand. A young woman was just passing by, carrying another item to her bag. "You are offered to go to an unknown place, and you agree to entrust your life to strangers. I am offered to fly to Calcutta, a city in India. It's quite a modern metropolis," Selena explained, "and they are not strangers at all. I checked the information. It's a private clinic. They are funded by a British medical research center, and it's not just a clinic. It's a whole complex. They have their own laboratories and everything they need. They also have private sponsors. That's the kind of person who is willing to help me. This philanthropist must have looked through the questionnaires and he was interested in my case. So I'm lucky. You said I trust you with my life. What life, Sam? What life? Selena raised her voice and tried to pull away, but the man didn't move, just grabbed her other shoulder and pulled her closer to him. I'm dying, Sam. I got maybe a couple months left. I don't have any other way out. I don't know how they're going to treat me, but I don't care. You know what I mean? This is at least a chance, at least some hope. She finished barely audibly and her head bowed, her hair draped over her face. All right, he said, letting her go. Good. If that's what it takes, fine. Maybe they'll help, but I'll be with you. Selena raised her head and they met gazes. Her eyes flashed with the almost frantic hope of a desperate man driven to a dead end. His eyes shone with steely determination. But, no buts, I've made up my mind, Sam said. You won't be alone out there. I'll look after you. We'll figure it out on the spot. Selena was in a new shock because she didn't expect this from her neighbor at all. It's true, I'm not very good with foreigners. Sam scratched the back of his head. I have a passport. That's right. Last year, I thought to fly to Turkey on a hot ticket to have a good time. But then my car broke down. I had an accident and flushed everything down there. But I have a passport, and that's the main thing. Will you need a visa there? No, answered Selena. That's good, by the way. I'd already got the money for the tickets. We leave in the morning. Great, Sam said. His tone was cheerful, but the man felt strange. Like he'd gotten on a roller coaster, already buckled up. Let's go. And there's no coming back. From there, the conversation turned to practical matters. Sam wanted to find out as much information as possible, and Selena shared everything she knew and assumed. She said she had already searched the internet. She had found the clinic's page, and it didn't seem to be a particularly well-known organization in India itself. But the point was that it seemed to have been specializing in the treatment of complex, rare diseases for years. Selena had also managed to find an article by an Italian journalist who wrote that diseases were being treated, but it was really all on an experimental level, and no one could guarantee the patients of the clinic that they would not experience any dangerous side effects or consequences that the doctors themselves might not even be aware of. And no one could promise doomed people that they, having chosen these dubious methods of treatment, would survive at all. The same journalist said that this is, in fact, the last hope and that there are no real confirmed cases of recovery. Practically none. Sounds like the beginning of a cheap thriller with a bad ending for the heroes. I'm sorry, Sam said honestly. I know, Selena nodded. They sat in the kitchen. She slid into a chair with her legs tucked under her and sipped her condensed milk tea leisurely. Sam opted for a strong black coffee. His life had just been turned upside down, and he was doing it all voluntarily. If he had been in the habit of stronger drinks, he would have had some. But all he had left was coffee. You see, Selena explained thoughtfully, when I just started to look for how to treat the world's diseases complex, just when I found out that I was sick, I began to be interested in everything. In general, I learned that in many countries laws prohibit doctors, treat experimentally, and in India, she waved her hand. Very flexible laws, and unfortunately, corruption is rampant in some places. So, there's plenty of room for scientists, but there's something else. It's bad. The thing is that some drug corporations are experimenting there, and the locals agree. They're willing to be test subjects to make some money, to feed their families. It's awful, Sam shrugged. Isn't it dangerous for you to go there? I thought about that. Only, Celine grinned unfunnily. What kind of mouse test subject am I, huh? I'm sick to my stomach. The only thing you can do with me is treat me. Anyway, I guess I just don't have any other choice. Okay, Sam winked at her. I'll keep an eye on you. I'll get a tan. I haven't been on vacation in a while. Oh, Selena's eyes widened. The money for the tickets. You have to spend your own money. No, that won't do. It's okay, Sam said. I got a stash. But would this clinic mind if I came with you? I haven't asked them yet. I'll call them right now. Right now. The woman reached for the phone. Stop. Her friend stopped her. Don't. Think about it. If it's clean, what normal clinic would object to a patient having a chaperone? None, right? It's a normal practice. Sounds logical, Celine agreed. That's what I mean. Okay, just one more thing. He scratched the back of his head again. What a fool I am. I have a friend in India. What do you mean? Selena didn't understand. The usual. He studied to be a programmer, so he says that he can work from any point of Selenium. However, lately this point was in his parents' apartment. But then he saved up some money and was going to Thailand. Then he spent a month in Vietnam. Yes, he said he was going to India. He wants to surf there. But the sea is far from the city. Where are we going? Yeah, Selena thought about it for a minute. A lot. Well, that's okay. I don't think we might need his help. And what good is a programmer, right? He's not a hacker to hack into your clinic server and find out what kind of water they're really stirring up. Sam muttered under his breath, typing a message on his phone. But still, when you have at least one acquaintance in a foreign country, it's easier, isn't it? Well, I guess so, the woman said. She had another headache. Very badly. Only now, when Sam was around, when he, in fact, a complete stranger, was suddenly willing to do so much for her, Selena suddenly realized that this pain, which she had always rushed to take a pill for before, she could tolerate now. She sipped some more tea. Is it really possible for a dark streak to turn into a bright one? Kevin stretched lazily as he felt good. The sun was blazing. Another cocktail sent a wave of lightness into his head, and a young, shapely mistress was splashing in the waves ahead. Yes, Maria turned out to be very grateful. They grabbed the last places in the travel agency and went on the hottest ticket to the tropics, on an island near Africa, where, as the manager assured the travel agency, usually could afford a vacation only millionaires. This trip for two people took a good part of the taken sum. Kevin's passionate friend spent a lot more in the local store. It turned out that she needed new dresses, swimsuit, handbags. Kevin felt like a king. Pamper yourself, my beauty, and do not deny yourself anything. According to his calculations, the remaining money should have been enough to go to restaurants, buy some little things, and then Kevin tried not to think about coming back. Because even though he had the courage to take the money, he realized that he would be questioned for it. His wife, her parents, acquaintances. Kevin cursed at himself mentally. He could have turned things around, left the door to the apartment open, and the lie that thieves had gotten into the house in the first place. And he could say that he was only on a business trip. However, all this was still somewhere far ahead of him. But here and now, Kevin stretched again. His mistress would soon splash in the water, and it would be time for them both to move into the refreshing coolness of the room. The girl is so good in her bathing suit. The men are drooling all over her, but she's even better without it. Kevin was pulled out of his pleasant thoughts by the trill of the phone. He took it, as he always carried it with him, according to his old habit, developed on business trips. The phone was ringing, and it was annoying. Kevin picked it up and frowned. It was his mother-in-law calling. Of course, she was the last thing he needed was a tantrum. He firmly rejected the call. The phone beeped, announcing a new messenger message. Kevin decided to delete it and leave it alone. But to delete it, he had to open it first. And then his eyes caught on a line. His brain, not quite intoxicated yet, read it. Kevin's eyes widened. What the hell was that? You killed her. How on earth could you? Sam took her to India. Kevin blinked and reread the message over and over again. What the hell? Yes, he had taken the money that wouldn't have saved her anyway. But what was the mother-in-law trying to say? Did something happen to her right away? What about the doctor's words that there's time? And what does that have to do with their neighbor cab driver? How did he pick her up? And what does that have to do with India? If Selena's dead, Kevin broke out in a cold sweat at the thought. If she's dead, no, that can't be true. What does this have to do with Sam, neighbor? What's this about India? He jabbed his fingers into the phone, dialing his mother-in-law's number. No answer, but why? Kevin gave his father-in-law the same result. He felt sick and all the alcohol was gone. Oh, the water is so nice. The sun was blocked by the shadow of the lover's figure as she stood next to him, rubbing her wet hair vigorously with a towel. Do you want a massage? With this on screen, she wiggled her hips spectacularly. Kevin? The girl's voice changed as she noticed something was wrong with her man. Hi, I need I'll go to the room, you go ahead, he answered and wandered away without turning around, holding the phone to his ear. Kevin, what's wrong? A young beauty called out to him. Then, not getting an answer, she just shrugged. Something curious caught her eye. Kevin had left his wallet on the chaise lounge. She smiled and tied her pareo around her hips. She could find something to do. She could go to a jewelry shop and a cafe for exotic desserts. You have to pamper yourself if you have to put up with this at night. Kevin tried to call his wife's parents the rest of the day and all evening to no avail. Then he dialed his parents, but they answered that no, his wife had not contacted them and neither had her relatives. Not wanting to be embarrassed by such a crazy hint about his wife's connection with the neighboring cab driver, Kevin did not tell his parents anything. He didn't realize who to turn to with this at all. He just felt kind of sick and uneasy. He felt so bad that he had rejected the caress of his young, grateful, tropical vacationing girlfriend that night. And then, in the middle of the night, he began to throw things into his bag. I'm going home. What? Sleepily asked Maria, looking out from under the blanket, in which she, offended by the ignoring of her sponsor, wrapped herself like a cocoon. Are you crazy? We still have 4 more days to go. I can't. It's an emergency. I've got a wife. Kevin stopped himself just in time. Couldn't you have thought of her before? The girl snorted derisively. What about me? Are you leaving me? What about? Do you need more money? Kevin said angrily. He reached into this second wallet, not the one he had taken to the beach. In this second wallet, he kept his main supply of money. He counted out enough for a return ticket. He wanted to throw the rest at his mistress, but he changed his mind and threw her only a few bills. It would be too fat, and he wouldn't get anything else from her, for that matter. Here's for you, explained the rain of money waking up on the girl. It should be enough for the rest of the trip. We've already bought the tickets there. You'll come back alone. Explain to me what's going on. Flashed with rage beauty. I don't want to get involved with people like you again. Hysterical grandfather. Come on, it's over between us. Kevin didn't say anything and pulled up his pants. He put on his shirt, jacket, shoes, forgetting his socks, and left the room. He had to go home now. There was something wrong there, and for some reason he had the feeling that it could ruin his life. I'm a horrible person. Selena exhaled, unbuckling her seatbelt as the plane took off safely. Nonsense, Sam, who was sitting next to her, told her. What else could you tell your parents? That you decided to give yourself into the hands of mysterious scientists who were illegally experimenting. Sounds like the plot of a cheap thriller in which none of the characters is in danger of surviving, the young woman said thoughtfully. Would you like a drink? A smiling stewardess appeared next to their seats. Do you have tomato juice? Sam asked. He hated fruit juices, only vegetable juices. Yes, there's also celery juice. Just tomato. Selma, do you want anything? No thanks, she shook her head. She was beginning to feel like her appetite was gone altogether and she wouldn't eat a bite or drink a sip until she got home, healthy. Only, how real was that even? It was as if Selena could still feel the gentle, loving embrace of her mother and father on her shoulders, feel the touch of her father's lips on her forehead, how they had said goodbye to her. They believed the lies with which she had wrapped the truth. She had said, as it were, that the money for the medicine Professor Harry had told them to use was no longer there. Her husband had taken it. With icy calm, Celine also added that he probably took it for his mistress. Just what else would he have taken it for? She knew for a fact that Kevin wasn't a gambler, that he didn't like any kind of loans at all. He wasn't trying to start any business. Logically, there is another woman. Selena also made sure to convey to her parents the idea that she didn't care about her husband's betrayal. There are, more important things to do right now, like saving her own life. She said that one international medical center unexpectedly responded to her questionnaire and that they would try to cure her with the latest technology. It was true. And the fact that it all looked like a dangerous venture. Selena knew for sure that if her parents knew the truth, if her friends knew the truth, they wouldn't let her go. Well, how could they not? She, as an adult and capable person, could have flown, but she just couldn't leave her loved ones in such a state. Her relatives, of course, were astonished at her haste, but Selena explained that it was just treatment was terribly expensive, and there were few places, so she had to take them while she had them. And they were also amazed that her neighbor was keeping her company, but she said that he was her friend. Yes, she wants him to accompany her. Period. Selena's cousin Sam wanted to go too. He was a student. He said it was okay if he skipped a little bit of the session, but she told him no. She said he shouldn't go. It's better to let him study. Selena, we're here. Sam touched her shoulder. Already? She woke up. You're pale. You should have eaten. He shook his head. Okay, now we're on the ground. The chairs are so narrow, I can barely straighten my back. Maybe I should be treated here too. What are they worth, sciatica, if they can handle you? He tried to cheer her up with a joke, and she smiled back out of politeness. They flew light with just a couple of bags of carry-on luggage, so they were in the main hall of the airport quickly. So what's next? Sam looked around. Oh, is that us? He pointed to where a European-looking girl, dressed in a strict black suit and white shirt, stood. She was holding a sign with Selena's last name and initials written in transliteration. It looked like. Selena took a deep breath. 1, 1, 2, 3. Here it comes. Selena had asked herself that question several times throughout the flight, but had never been able to figure out what exactly she was expecting. Her imagination, probably because her consciousness was overworked by the recent events, drew all sorts of pictures more suitable for Hollywood movies. For example, that on arrival she would be stuffed into a car, separated from Sam, and no one would ever find her again, or that they would be taken to an underground secret scientific base. However, the reality was quite different. The girl, who introduced herself as Megan, calmly accepted the news that Selena had not flown alone and only said that if they had been warned about the presence of a companion, they would have paid for his tickets too. She'd also clarified who Sam was, her husband, relative, or something else. Selena replied, embarrassed, that he was just a friend. Megan wasn't confused by that. She asked for Sam's passport for a moment, just to take a picture and forward it to the clinic to be processed as a chaperone. The clinic was in the suburbs and was, as Selena realized at first glance, a huge compound surrounded by a high fence, with armed guards at the entrance. The clinic looked like a mansion, surrounded by a well-tended garden. Megan said that there was a tennis court, a swimming pool, a movie theater, a cafe. There was no charge for anything, in the sense that everything is free for Selena. But that's because she was lucky to get into the clinic under a special program, all thanks to one benefactor, and so treatment costs hundreds of thousands of dollars or even millions. Except that Megan never once mentioned the name of this generous person during the whole conversation. Free cheese, Sam said meaningfully to Selena as she translated what Megan had said to him. We're not allowed to go outside the clinic, Selena added, ignoring her companion's suspicion. The epidemiological situation is unfavorable in the city, so, according to the terms of the contract, we'll be here for a couple of months. And all this on a tourist visa, issued in 5 minutes at the border. Legally, I can't say, Sam sighed. Megan said that they would reorganize everything through their own channels somehow. If they were to do it for the treatment visa, it would take too long, and we don't have time. Selena, like all people, was not happy with the hospital environment, so she was pleasantly surprised that instead of a ward, she was going to live in a spacious apartment divided into 3 small rooms. As she looked around, she was surprised to realize that there was not only a marble bathroom with fresh flowers, but also a small kitchen. Megan explained that it was all for the convenience of the patients, for some people were used to home cooking and strictly defined meals. Sam was placed in a nearby apartment, which was more modest, but also very comfortable. On the first day, Selena was demanded. Yes, it was so delicately demanded to sign the necessary papers. Moreover, they were made in 3 languages: Hindi, English, and some copies were in Russian, so that she could easily understand the content of the papers. Selena said that she needed some time, and she was given it, and the next morning she signed everything. Aren't you in a hurry? Sam asked. They sat in a small cafe and ate. That morning, Selena had already met several specialists, doctors who would be treating her. They were all Europeans and some Americans. Their leader, as Sam, who was still very suspicious, called him, introduced himself as Alexander. Maybe we should have consulted a lawyer, Sam asked. Where can I get one here? You can consult remotely, Sam grumbled. Despite the fact that everything seemed fine, he had a strange and disturbing feeling that there was something wrong with this place. I looked at it in English fluently and in detail in Russian. "It's fine," I signed there, sighing. Selena sipped her milkshake from the tube. "That I agree to the experimental treatment, which is developed by such and such a doctor, using such and such technologies. Alexander told me a little about what they would do." "And what did you get out of it?" "Not much," she smiled sadly. "But what am I risking, Sam? They don't charge me a dime. It's all free." "Thank you. There are still good people out there. There's this sponsor who's helping the clinic. By the way, where are the other patients?" Sam suddenly asked a question. Selena had thought about that too, but then she dismissed the question. And now they had to go back, because since yesterday they had seen only doctors and also service staff, such as waiters, gardeners. But they hadn't met a single person who looked like a patient. That same day, Selena asked Megan about it. She replied that the clinic had a very narrow profile of specialization, and it just so happened that so far she, Selena, was the only patient here. Then, after some thought, Megan added that it was normal practice for such a serious place to have all the luminaries of science focused on one patient. He gets maximum attention. This answer seemed logical to the young woman, and Sam seemed to agree. Toward evening, Selena called her parents to say that she had gotten there, that everything was fine. "No, don't tell me anything about Kevin, please." She cut her off rather abruptly when she realized that her mother was trying to turn the conversation to her husband, her ex, by the way. Selena was determined to get a divorce as soon as she got back, if she came back, of course. And then the examinations began, some tests, and finally the treatment process itself. Selena realized that all this was a natural and necessary part of her life now, but she tried to think about anything but her illness outside of the very manipulations that the doctors were doing to her in the rooms that looked like a set for a Hollywood science fiction movie. Selena couldn't imagine now. How would she be here without Sam? She and he used to walk in the garden, watch movies. And then, about a month after arriving at the clinic, Selena suddenly got worse. She just fainted in the garden, and falling into Sam's arms, Selena thought that it even looks like a scene from a love novel, because it's so romantic to lose your senses near the rose bushes. She came to her senses in the ward, or rather in her room, in bed. She was surrounded by doctors. Celine was told that it was a natural process. It was just that her body had begun to undergo some serious changes, and the planned treatment, so to speak, had entered its active phase. She was also told that the next week would be crucial, and that she would have to be extra careful and generally follow bed rest. Selena, encouraged by the fact that she might soon be completely healthy, agreed to everything. "Would you like anything else?" The maid turned to Selena. She was a very young girl, and it was clear from her appearance that she was a local Indian. She had just placed a bouquet of hyacinth flowers on the bedside table. "Thank you, no," smiled the woman. "Have you worked here recently?" "Yes. My uncle helped me get a job," she said brightly. "It's a very nice place. I get paid a lot more than the hotel I worked at before. Now I can pay my younger brother's school fees." "That's good," Selena agreed. "But I don't have any siblings, and I've always wanted to." They exchanged a few more words, and then Vimala, the girl's name was, remarked in passing that she had come here by pure chance, because her uncle had known a man for many years. Vimala's uncle had a serious business supplying medical equipment from the UK to local clinics. He happened to know a British gentleman, John Davies, who had been the main sponsor of the clinic for 2 years now. The uncle had put in a good word for his niece with Mr. Davies, and thanks to that she was working here. Selena was a little tired from the long conversation, and even though the doctors assured her that everything was going great, she often, very often felt unwell. She wanted to tell Vimala politely that she would like to take a nap, but then the girl noticed her patient's drowsiness and wished her the best rest and left. By evening, Selena had more energy and went to the cafe. She was accompanied by Sam. They ate fish baked in leaves and chose saffron curry to accompany it. "Remember when I wondered who the mysterious patron of the arts was whose name was being withheld?" she said suddenly, and shared what she had learned with her friend. "Probably the man is just a rich guy who is scary and doesn't want everyone to know that he does charity work." Sam shrugged his shoulders. "Maybe he's just modest." Yeah, Selena nodded. I'm lucky there's one person in the world who cares about a rare disease like mine. In the evening, Sam sat in his room and mindlessly watched all kinds of entertaining videos on the internet. He had been thinking a lot about Selena lately and how he felt about her. He realized that she had already become a special person in his life. But what to do with that next? He didn't want to upset the delicate balance of friendship that had developed between them. Then Sam remembered the conversation at dinner and just for fun, typed the name of this man who had sponsored Selena's treatment into a search engine, started the online translator and plunged into reading. And after a while of reading, Sam frowned. What's wrong? Selena asked when she and Sam met for breakfast. Nothing. Sam was lazily stirring the salad leaves in his plate. What did the doctor say? They say I'll be healthy soon. Selena sighed. They sometimes show me some graphs, explain everything, but it's so unclear. They say that now I'm in the final stage, and now, in order to consolidate the effect, it will be necessary to introduce one drug. It'll consolidate all the treatment that's been done so far. I see, Sam nodded. Selena, can I ask you a question? Yes, of course. What is your blood type? Fourth. Why do you ask? So, can we talk somewhere else? Let's take a walk. Sam looked around nervously, suspiciously. Selena shrugged and got up and followed him. It's really good to walk a little bit. I found out who the sponsor of the clinic is. I looked it up on the internet. So, Sam started telling Selena everything he learned. He told her that John Davis was known as a big businessman and multimillionaire a few years ago. But then he was forced to hand over all his business to his son, who took over the board of shareholders. The reason for this decision was that John became seriously ill. The advanced age of Mr. Davis was already over 70, of course, complicated the treatment. John was not stingy to pay any money to be saved. He agreed to experimental, complex treatment. And it seemed that the disease had receded. But then it came back again. The latest news could be gleaned from the yellow press, which theoretically, of course, could say anything. But they wrote that the last hope of John Davis' transplantation of some organs and tissues. There was even a scandal connected with it. It was written that he, through his money and connections, tried to move himself to the top of the waiting list, and then John disappeared from the radar of the press. And now it turns out he's sponsoring this clinic, Sam said. It's all terrible, Selena sighed. But I don't understand what this has to do with me. What are you talking about? It's only natural for him to help someone, since he knows how hard it is to be sick. It's just a kind act. This John has the same blood type as you, Sam said quietly. Did you know that very few donors are suitable for such people? They only need people who are also type 4. And besides, they also wrote that this John is a supporter of the theory that it is necessary to select a donor not only by blood type, but also by some genetic compatibility. These are some very recent and not yet proven scientific theories. I don't. Selena stopped abruptly. What are you trying to say? Think. Sam stopped too, walked around to stand in front of her, and was now looking Selena straight in the eye. Suddenly, you get a letter from this medical center. They're suddenly willing to take on treating you for free. What does that have to do with it, and what do you? Selena tried to object, because she didn't like where Sam was going with this, but he kept talking. You come in on a tourist visa. You don't even leave the clinic. There aren't any patients here anymore, just staff. Selena, I don't mean to sound crazy, but you'll be completely healthy. Selena, putting his hands on her shoulders, Sam squeezed her shoulders and lowered his voice even more. Don't you think that they want to fix you for a reason? Maybe that's why they want to cure you, so that you'll be suitable material to cure another person. I'm sorry to be so blunt, so frank, but I really think that maybe that's what's going on here. Sam, you're saying scary things. That sounded really crazy. Selena couldn't make sense of it all, and yes, she could see a certain logic in Sam's words. We're in India, Selena. You said yourself that here, sometimes bad things happen. A quiet sob escaped the young woman's lips. She suddenly remembered that she had given all her documents to Megan, who had taken them for some paperwork, and then told her that they were kept here in the office, that she could take them back at any time, of course. Selena just wanted to slap herself for being so careless. How could she have been so stupid? Was it thanks to that maid's accidental slip of the tongue that she and Sam had learned the nightmarish truth about this place. Was she really here for a reason and really here to? Because she'd been chosen by an elderly rich man as the perfect donor. Of course, he could probably get someone else with this kind of money, but what if the information about her blood type and her genes got from the Foundation into third hands and this man, that is, the people who work for him, decided that she was the perfect object, the right material? Look, I don't think it's that big a deal, Selena said, more to comfort herself than Sam. I mean, it's all very serious. They can't know that I'll agree to it. Suppose they could offer me money, lots of money, but I could always refuse. What does he want? She asked, and her heart skipped a beat. I think he's got kidney trouble. Well, it's not the heart, Selena grinned. Theoretically, the donor doesn't have to die for this. Selena, Sam just hissed at her. What the hell are you talking about? I was just suddenly thinking about the fact that if it's as bad as you say, then what if they don't need my consent? I won't let anything bad happen to you, Sam said firmly and put his arms around her, pulling her against him. That night, Selena, though she felt very tired, couldn't sleep. She just couldn't stop thinking about the subject of her conversation with Sam. On the one hand, she realized that her assumptions were this was completely absurd. Was it even possible in the modern world? But she knew that sometimes terrible and bad things happened in the world. And who knows? Is she here thanks to the goodwill, a gesture of mercy of a millionaire who himself, in fact, is terminally ill, or she is chosen to become a victim, which will serve to save him? And what to do if the worst assumptions are true? Run? Go to the local police? But first I have to get my papers back, and besides, what if she's wrong? Then she'll refuse the final treatment. And then, as the doctor said, that young, blonde doctor, his name was Alexander. He was the head of the team of scientists here. He said that the final and most important stage of the treatment is ahead. No, we have to stay here and try to figure it out. The dream finally began to pull Selena into its embrace, and before falling into it finally, she thought of something else. Maybe, if she was given the choice to become a donor, because it was not fatal and receive treatment or refuse treatment, she would choose the former, because that way she would be able to survive. Selena shivered under the warm blanket. What a terrible choice. But if it came down to blackmail, she would have said yes. The next morning, Selena awoke unusually early. Usually at this time, she was still dozing. The young woman opened her eyes and almost shrieked because the ward, that is her room, was unusually crowded. Megan was here, very pale in her hand, and she was clutching a folder with some documents. Here was Dr. Alexander in a crumpled robe, and by his face, it seemed that he had not slept all night. Here was his assistant, and there were some strangers, and judging by the clothes, strict business suits, that did not belong to the staff of the clinic. One brunette man with piercing gray eyes attracted special attention among them. He stood closest to Selena's bed and looked at her so intently. The young woman shuddered at the thought that this strange group must have been here for at least a few minutes, and that he had just stared at her asleep. Sorry, we didn't mean to scare you, Megan turned to Selena, but Harry Davis wants to talk to you. Davis? Selena sat up abruptly on the bed and immediately felt dizzy. Are you related to John Davies? Do you speak English well? The young man asked. I was told you were Russian. Yes, I am his son. I speak English well, Selena said. I am a teacher. I teach this language at school. We can communicate without an interpreter. Events. Whatever's going on here has obviously taken some kind of serious turn. Can someone explain to me what's going on? Selena asked anxiously, looking around at the crowd. We need to talk about your treatment, Harry began cautiously. If you're feeling well now, of course. In her condition, she can't be under much stress, Alexander said, giving Harry a frown. Oh, is that so? I don't think your opinion at all. After what you've done here, it doesn't matter anymore, growled Harry at him. What's going on? Repeated Selene confusedly. All I ask is that you react calmly to everything, Alexander said grimly. If you need to be sedated, just say it without listening to him. Selene turned to Harry, and he spoke. He began by saying that his father had unfortunately passed away. It had happened just this night. Harry explained that he had been here in India, in Calcutta, dealing with not exactly business matters, but more specifically, he had been dealing with his father's affairs. "I'm sorry for your loss," Selena said. At that moment, she wasn't even thinking about what would happen to her treatment after the benefactor died. She just felt sorry for the man who couldn't cope with the disease. "My father was stationed here," Harry repeated, "in this clinic, but in a separate building and you? But he planned to meet you. It was supposed to happen just the other day. He wanted to tell you about why you were here in the first place." Celine looked at him confused. "There are eyes and ears everywhere," Harry said and sent an unkind look to Alexander. "The thing is, it's come to my attention that my father... Anyway, what you were talking about with your friend, Sam. You were right. My father wanted you to be his donor." "What?" Selena jerked on the bed, but the movement must have been too abrupt, and it gave her a severe headache and made her dizzy, and the woman leaned back on the pillows with a quiet groan. "Please don't worry. You're in absolutely no danger. But you've turned out to be amazingly perceptive." Harry continued his story. It turns out that John Davies had decided he had to find a donor at any cost. But in the past, he had already suffered a failed transplant and now feared that another failure would be fatal. That's why he decided to search for a suitable donor not only by the standard parameters, but also using the latest methods, not yet even fully recognized by official science, with which it was possible to match a person by genetic compatibility. Naturally, the search for candidates because of this was still reduced, and to such a probability, at which the chances of finding a donor literally tended to zero. Using his connections, Mr. Davis searched for people all over the world, and such a person was found. The thing was that Selena had applied to the very same foundation registered on an island in the Caribbean. Harry said that initially his father wanted, of course, to find a less healthy person, but then something incredible happened. It was all about the fact that John and Selena had essentially the same disease. It was just that the elderly millionaire had it in a less aggressive form, which allowed him to keep himself alive all these years. The people John hired were looking for likely donor candidates in every database they could access. And then one day they got people's data from the very foundation Selena had applied to. And that's when Harry jabbed a finger in Alexander's direction, decided it was a brilliant plan. You see, treatment for a disease like this, it's very hard on the body. It stresses all of its systems. My father, with his age, it was especially difficult for him. And then this madman, Harry sighed, decided that if he could genetically edit your body, that is, your body, Celine, your internal organs and blood, they would be essentially invulnerable to disease. And then they would be fully usable to use them to save my father. Celine froze. She looked around the crowd with wide open eyes. You wanted to take me apart. Are you crazy? Alexander couldn't help himself. Who do you think we are? We only wanted to make you a lucrative offer. Mr. Davis was ready to reward you generously if you agreed to it. You could become a millionaire, and you could easily live without a few things. And of course, Harry added, you wouldn't have warned her that her health was very fragile, that such an intervention in a couple of years would have made her an invalid, right? And what was the plan if she had refused? The man's tone dropped. What would you have been willing to do then? This conversation is over, Alexander shouted. What right do you have to dispose of this place? Let me think, grinned Harry. If only because I'm my father's sole heir, and accordingly, his obligation to fund your research has passed to me. By the way, I don't think it's worth continuing. I'm afraid you've committed, shall we say, a lot of offenses in recent years. The local authorities will probably be very interested in talking to you, won't they, Alexander? Excellent. The blonde grinned, and it looked like he was more than confident. You think it's that easy? Well, try it. My scientific research was needed not only by your father, but also by someone else. Don't think that you are the most influential person on the planet. Please, Celine said quietly. Please, go away, everyone. I don't feel well. I need to be alone. With those words, she fell into unconsciousness. And when she came to, it was Harry again. He was looking at her intently. There was another man next to her, in a doctor's suit, but at least it wasn't Alexander or any of his assistants Celine had known before. But the main thing was that Sam was beside her now. He was holding her hand. "Hi," he said and smiled. "What's wrong?" he asked excitedly, noticing the bruise on his cheekbone. I didn't immediately realize what was being explained to me. I thought he was one of the bad guys too. "That's what happened with one of his guards," Sam replied, glancing at Harry with a frown. "Actually, I'm not so sure about that even now." "What did he say?" The millionaire here turned to Selena for translation. "He thinks you're the villain type too." It was hardly an appropriate situation, but Celine found it funny for some reason. "You're right to suspect me," Harry nodded. "My father. I didn't think he'd go this far. I found out too late. We didn't even have time to talk about everything. But I guess I can only make up for a little of what he did." "Your treatment isn't over yet, is it, Selena?" "I think there's one more drug left," she said. "What are you talking to him about?" Sam asked excitedly. Selena answered him. "Is this another treatment?" "No, I'm not." "Sam." Selena squeezed his hand gently. "It's okay now. I'm not going to get hurt by anyone else. I have to finish my treatment." Only she looked at Harry. "Is it possible for me to get the treatment, but without Alexander and the others?" I'll be honest. I don't want anything done to me by people who see me as just a means to cure their rich client." "It's possible," Harry said. "Alexander left the clinic. I've notified the local authorities, but we have a little time before this place will close. You'll have time to finish your treatment, and then you'll need follow-up care. You'll have to stay in India for a few weeks. I'll get you transferred to another really safe hospital where they'll just monitor your condition, and then you will be able to go home." "Thank you," Salim replied and smiled genuinely. Harry kept his promise, and soon Selena received her last dose of the experimental drug, and then she was transported to another clinic. Sam, wherever possible, never took a step away from her. Selena called her family to tell them that she was almost completely well, and she was very grateful that her parents remembered her request and didn't say anything about Kevin. And then, a few weeks later, it was announced that Selena could come home. But after the doctor gave the good news, the head doctor at the clinic where Selena was being seen was an Indian woman named Lakshmi. "You should know something. Mr. Harry Davis gave me all the details of your treatment, and I can now understand why this happened." The doctor lowered her eyes. "That's right," sighed the head of the clinic. "The disease no longer threatens you, but the experimental treatment you underwent, it made you infertile. You won't be able to have children. I'm so sorry for you." Selena froze. She forgot how to breathe. Just a few minutes ago, she felt like the happiest person in the world because she was healthy. But now, she realized with terrifying, merciless clarity that she would never be a mother. For some reason, she didn't want to ask questions. Somehow she knew it was true. "Thank you for telling it like it is," she nodded. "So now I can go home." Rain drizzled on the day of departure, and the gray, puffy clouds promised that India would soon be hit with the full force of tropical showers. Selena sat in the lounge next to Sam. He was holding her hand, as he was accustomed to doing. "Let's get married," he said suddenly. Selena turned and their eyes met. It was so unexpected. She had only thought of him as a friend and had never imagined that he— "Are you serious?" she asked. "That's not how you propose, is it?" Sam grinned. "I know I should have waited until you were divorced and made it nice and romantic, but it's just the way it is. I just can't keep quiet about the fact that I love you anymore." "Sam, I can answer that I agree, but there's something," Selena sighed. "After the treatment here, apparently Alexander broke something in my body. I won't be able to have children." It seemed to her that something faded in Sam's eyes at that moment. Selena couldn't know that when he thought about her, he dreamed about how big and friendly their family would be. She could just see the change in his gaze. Sam was silent for a few moments. He realized that so much depended on his answer now. So much. Selena's future life and his own. So he answered, "I still want to marry you. But I've already realized that." He interrupted her. Not because he didn't want to hear it, but because he didn't want her to say anything she might regret. "I'll tell you the truth, I dreamed of having children. I told you how it turned out in my last marriage, but I just love you. I think I'll be able to revisit my dream. Also, you have a lot of relatives, right?" Probably some of them have kids or will soon. I think I can settle for just being someone's, well, probably like an uncle. A relative who gives toys and takes them to the zoo. What do you think? Do you think you and I could play that role? Yes, Selena answered and touched her eyes with her fingers, wiping away the tears. It would. I love you too, Sam. I just realized it now. I love you and I want for us to always be together, no matter what happens. We will, he nodded, and then kissed her gently for the first time.